Yo, Atlas speaking and welcome to part 4 of What If I Was Reborn in Naruto as Raza of the Sand and brought greatness to the Sand Village. Let the tale begin. Chapter 76, Kusagakure. Kusagakure sprawls across an immense plain, its vast landscape dominated by fields of Ryujo flowers. These blossoms, with their crimson-hued buds, resemble flickering flames, making the entire terrain appear like a sea of fire under the sun's glow. Lacking natural defenses, Kusagakure has been fortified into a near-impenetrable stronghold. Towering walls of solid rock encircle the village, forming concentric layers of protection. Within these walls, the architecture echoes the grandeur of European castles, each structure hewn from the same hardy stone. Perched atop the walls, Kusagakure ninjas keep a watchful eye on the plains. Their forehead protectors glint under the light, and their stern expressions reveal unwavering vigilance. A closer look at their attire reveals two distinct factions within the village. Most bear flame-like insignias, marking them as members of the Grassfruit faction, Kusagakure's primary combat force. The remainder were emblems shaped like budding Ryujo flowers, signifying their allegiance to the Grassflower faction. From their elevated position, the sentries scan the horizon, their view unobstructed by the open plains. This keen surveillance allows them to detect potential threats with ease. Thus, when 13 figures streaked across the Ryujo-covered expanse at incredible speed, the Kusagakure guards spotted them instantly. However, their reactions lagged behind the sheer swiftness of the intruders. Before they could even raise an alarm, the strangers had already reached the base of the fortress walls. "Who goes there?" A sharp voice pierced the air. Whoosh! In a blur of motion, the 13 figures leaped onto the wall. Only then did the Kusagakure ninjas get a clear view of their forehead protectors. "They're from Sunagakure." Clang! 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 The village alarm bells erupted in a frantic chorus, their chimes ringing across Kusagakure. Heh! A cold scoff escaped Raza's lips. His dark eyes flickered with resolve as he addressed the 12 covert operatives at his side. "Proceed as planned." "Hi!" With no hesitation, the 12 Sunagakure ninjas dispersed, each one vanishing in a blur of motion. Only 3 remained by Raza's side. Seeing this, Raza lifted both hands, channeling an overwhelming surge of natural energy through his body. The air around him vibrated as he unleashed his technique. Sage Art, Sand Control Jutsu, Flowing Sand Waterfall. In an instant, the vibrant plains surrounding Kusagakure transformed. The soft, fertile ground shifted and churned as an ocean of golden sand erupted, swallowing the landscape. Towering waves of sand roared across the terrain, darkening the sky as they surged toward the village. Kusagakure, though once prosperous, was not a vast village. Raza estimated it to be only 3 to 4 times the size of Shikaku, a place he had encountered before. Thus, his sandstorm, rivaling the scale of a natural disaster, was more than enough to engulf the entire stronghold. A suffocating fear spread through Kusagakure as the sky turned ominous beneath the shifting dunes. Panic gripped the village. The lower-ranking ninjas, the backbone of Kusagakure's forces, stared in horror. Even the mid-tier elites, considered high-ranking within this village, had never witnessed such devastating ninjutsu before. This can't be real. Is this really ninjutsu? Are you joking? A stunned silence overtook the battlefield. At this moment, even the Sunagakure shinobi couldn't hide their own astonishment. All 12 members of the covert mobile unit were momentarily stunned by the sheer magnitude of Raza's technique. The vast, shifting sands that now dominated the landscape were a stark reminder of his overwhelming power. But they quickly shook off their awe. None dared to be careless in executing the mission he had entrusted to them. Just then, 4 figures emerged from the depths of Kusagakure, moving like shadows before coming to a halt in front of Raza. They wore long robes and masked their faces with intricately carved animal masks. These 4 were among the rare elite jonin of Kusagakure, warriors who had long stood at the pinnacle of the village's strength. "Who are you? Why has Sunagakure invaded Kusagakure?" "Sir, there are agreements between the great nations. You cannot attack us without justification. Their voices carried urgency, but Raza paid them no heed. Instead, he turned slightly to Sand Rat, the operative standing at his side. Is it just these four? Yes. Sand Rat confirmed with a firm nod. Though Raza had arrived in Kusagakure with his 12 covert operatives, he had taken the time to lay the groundwork before the assault. One of the most crucial steps had been Sand Rat's mission, securing contact with high-ranking members of the Grass Flower faction, Kusagakure's internal opposition. Kusagakure was rife with corruption, its two factions locked in bitter strife that had escalated into near civil war. The Grass Flower faction's demands were simple. In exchange for cooperation, Sunagakure would eliminate the high-ranking shinobi of the Grass Fruit faction, their primary rivals. Raza, seeing Sand Rat's confirmation, wasted no time. Sage Art, Sand Instant Body. His form dissolved in an instant, swept away in a spiraling torrent of sand. What? The four Kusagakure Jonin recoiled, dread seeping into their expressions. They immediately activated their sensory abilities, desperate to pinpoint Raza's location. But the air was still, save for the swirling sands that clouded their vision. Then, pain. Sage Art, Sand Instant Body, slash. A deadly silence hung in the air before crimson streaked the battlefield. This technique, a fusion of Raza's Sage Art, sand control and advanced elemental manipulation, exploited a fatal weakness in most shinobi, their inability to perceive natural energy. Moving undetected, he had closed the distance with chilling ease, striking them down before they even sensed his presence. Though not as instantaneous as the Flying Thunder God technique, nor effective against those with extraordinary reflexes, it was devastating against unsuspecting targets. Slash. 3 Kusagakure Jonin gasped as deep, lethal gashes split across their abdomens. Their bodies crumpled to the ground, blood pooling beneath them. Only one remained. His entire body trembled, his breath uneven as he stared in abject horror at his fallen comrades. His lips quivered as he forced out a single, shaking question. Who are you? Before he could turn, a cold voice whispered from behind him, sending an ice-cold shiver down his spine. My name is Raza, the Kazekage of Sunagakure. Go tell your leader. Hand over the Uzumaki girl. The remaining Jonin's breath hitched. But upon realizing Raza had no intention of killing him, terror swiftly turned to desperation. Without a second thought, he spun on his heel and fled, his heart pounding with relief at having escaped the clutches of death. At the heart of Kusagakure, within the towering fortress that loomed over the village, a tense gathering was underway. Seated around a long table in a dimly lit chamber, the high-ranking members of Kusagakure had convened in urgency. Yet, their numbers were alarmingly scarce. There were only 9 Jonin present, a testament to just how few elites Kusagakure truly had. Though their faces remained concealed behind their signature animal masks, their frenzied voices betrayed their fear. The weight of the crisis had shattered any illusion of composure. How did the Kazekage of Sunagakure find out about the Uzumaki girl? One demanded, his voice sharp with paranoia. Could someone from our own village have leaked the information? Another questioned, suspicion creeping into his tone. Idiot! Is this really the time for infighting? Then what do you propose we do? What else can we do? The Kazekage of Sunagakure is here in person. Do we really have a choice but to hand her over? Damn it! I can't accept this. One of the Jonin clenched his fists, his frustration boiling over. That girl carries the power of the Uzumaki clan. If we just had more time, we could. More time? Another cut in coldly. Survival is more important than ambition. Didn't you see? Kudo and the others were killed instantly. Do you really think you're stronger than them? A heavy silence settled over the room. Faced with the stark reality of life and death, even the most reluctant among them knew there was only one rational decision. Raza's display of power had been overwhelming. If they resisted, Kusagakure wouldn't just lose the Uzumaki girl, it would cease to exist. And it wasn't just Raza, other high-ranking Sunagakure shinobi were here as well. Just as the conclusion seemed inevitable, a voice cut through the stillness. No, we can hand her over. But we can't make it easy for them. Chapter 77, The Uzumaki Clan. What does that mean? All eyes immediately turn toward the speaker. If we can't claim the power of the Uzumaki clan for ourselves, then we must ensure Sunagakure doesn't get it either. Otherwise, where would that leave our village's pride? We understand that, but how exactly do we create trouble? The Kazekage is far beyond our capabilities. We may not be strong enough, but there are others who are. Have you forgotten about Konogakure? With the bond between the Uzumaki clan and Konoha, there's no way they would willingly hand the Uzumaki orphan over to Sunagakure. Realization flickered in their eyes. That's right. Sunagakure wants the Uzumaki girl, likely to harness her clan's power and make her a Jinchuriki. But Konoha would never allow that. At that moment, the one who had first spoken leaned forward, his voice measured yet firm. Sending the news directly to Konoha would take too long. Instead, why not inform Danzo, the leader of Konoha's forces currently engaged with Sunagakure? Why him? It's simple. The Kazekage must pass through either the land of rain or the land of fire to return from our land of grass to the land of wind. He will inevitably cross the land of rivers, and Danzo is stationed there. He can act on this information faster than anyone. After a pause, he continued. Besides, there's lingering bad blood between Danzo and Sunagakure. Whether it's the third Kazekage's mysterious disappearance or the failed assassination attempt on the current Kazekage, the tension between them hasn't faded. And let's not forget Danzo himself, his thirst for the Uzumaki clan's power is just as strong as ours. The logic was sound, and the higher-ups exchanged knowing glances, convinced by the plan. As Kusagakure frequently dealt with the major nations, they had established covert communication channels with Konoha's ANBU en route. And so, just over an hour later, Root received the message from Kusagakure. Land of Rivers, Tsurumura Castle. In recent days, it had become clear that, much like during their previous raid on the Land of Fire, Sunagakure had no real intention of going to war with Konoha. As a result, Konoha's front lines had gradually withdrawn. Along with recalling some of its shinobi, Konoha also made a tactical decision to avoid direct confrontations with Sunagakure's forces whenever possible. However, due to past experience, Konoha remained cautious, keeping over 1,000 troops stationed in the Land of Rivers to prepare for any unexpected conflict. Despite the lack of major battles, Danzo Shimura, Konoha's commander, had chosen not to return to the village for rest. There was something here that intrigued him far more than a return to Konoha ever could. Such remarkable talent. Shursui Uchiha. Inside Konoha's military encampment, Danzo sat alone, poring over intelligence reports gathered by Root on Shursui Uchiha. His normally cold, calculating eyes gleamed with interest. He had long heard whispers of this young prodigy, but given the deep-seated tensions between himself and the Uchiha clan, he had never paid much attention. However, after a week of direct observation, Danzo had come to a realization: this 8-year-old boy was far beyond ordinary. In Shursui, he saw traces of an old comrade. Uchiha Kagami. Danzo's eyes narrowed slightly, his expression darkening. Kagami, let's see just how far your bloodline can go. Just then, hurried footsteps approached from outside. Danzo-sama. Enter. The tent flap parted, and one of Danzo's most trusted subordinates, Ryoma Aburame, stepped inside, gripping a small note. His tone was urgent. Danzo-sama, Root has just received a message from Kusagakure. Kusagakure? Danzo's brow furrowed slightly. It was an unexpected source of information. But the look on Ryoma's face told him this was no trivial matter. Taking the note, Danzo's sharp gaze scanned its contents, and his expression grew even colder. Has this been verified? Ryoma reported what had been confirmed. The message came through a special channel, one that only Kusagakure's leader would know. Additionally, we captured several Kusagakure shinobi and used interrogation techniques to confirm the claim. It appears Kusagakure is harboring someone who may possess the Uzumaki clan's bloodline. Danzo's grip on the note tightened slightly. His voice dropped to a deadly whisper. Those grass rats. How dare they hide a survivor of the Uzumaki clan right under our noses? A tense silence followed before Ryoma cautiously asked. What are your orders, Danzo-sama? Danzo's mind was already calculating the best course of action. How many jonin can we mobilize here? Ryoma took a moment to consider. If we include the 2 Uchiha jonin and Root's elite forces, we can field a total of 38 jonin. The Uchiha, huh? Danzo's expression shifted ever so slightly, an unreadable glint in his eyes. Gather all of them. Immediately. Understood. Ryoma bowed before vanishing into the night. Such a large-scale mobilization by Danzo couldn't go unnoticed. As deputy commander, Shibi Aburame quickly detected the unusual movement within the camp. The sudden assembly of jonin was anything but routine. Without hesitation, he went straight to Danzo. Danzo-sama, what is happening? Why are all the jonin being gathered? Danzo had no intention of concealing the truth. Without a word, he handed Shibi the message Root had received. Shibi's eyes scanned the note, and his composed expression faltered. This was no small matter. Danzo, however, didn't give him time to fully process the information. We absolutely cannot allow Sunagakure to obtain the Uzumaki orphan. If they want her, it's undoubtedly to make her their Jinchuriki. Shibi nodded, his face grave. He did not dispute the logic. So, Danzo-sama, are you planning an interception? Should we inform the village? It's too late, Danzo replied without hesitation. By the time we report to Hiruzen and wait for his response, Sunagakure will have already taken her. Shibi understood the reasoning. Here in the land of rivers, Danzo had full authority over military operations. Then, what is your plan? Danzo's gaze darkened, his voice carrying an unmistakable edge. I will lead the jonin to intercept them. If everything goes as planned. A glint of ruthless intent flashed in his eyes. We might just ensure that this young Kazekage of Sunagakure never makes it back home. Without him, Sunagakure will no longer be a threat. Shibi stiffened. It was an undeniable opportunity, yet something about it unsettled him. He couldn't shake the memory of the last raid on the Land of Fire, where he had witnessed Sunagakure's young Fourth Kazekage in action firsthand. A sense of unease crept into his mind. He hesitated before voicing his concern. Danzo-sama, could this be a trap? A trap? Both Danzo and Ryoma Aburame turned to Shibi in surprise. Why would you think that? Shibi furrowed his brows, struggling to put his intuition into words. I can't say for sure, but this young Kazekage isn't someone to underestimate. Last time, even Minato and Jiraiya-sama struggled against him. He deliberately invoked the names of Minato Namikaze and Jiraiya, hoping it would add weight to his argument. Instead, it had the opposite effect. Humph. Danzo let out a sharp scoff, his tone laced with disdain. Without a shred of doubt, he issued his final order. If you don't know for certain, then don't speak nonsense. Gather the jonin. I'll take 30 of them. This time, we will capture the Fourth Kazekage alive. Chapter 78, A Salvation. Danzo had never imagined that one day, Minato Namikaze, someone he had always considered to be without any substantial foundation, would become his greatest obstacle to obtaining the position of Hokage. It wasn't until Minato successfully convinced the Uchiha clan to join the battle to prevent the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki from entering the fray that Danzo's suspicions were finally aroused. In that moment, he realized that something was deeply amiss. Upon reflecting, Danzo came to the unsettling realization that Minato had quietly transformed into a force so powerful that even he, with all his cunning and resources, could do nothing to oppose it. Minato was no longer just the disciple of one of the legendary three ninjas, Jiraiya. He was the beloved husband of Kushina Uzumaki, the current Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, and a close friend to the leaders of the Ino Shikacho and Yamanaka clans. He was also the mentor to Konoha's White Fawn's son, Kakashi Hatake, and a celebrated hero on the battlefield. All of these connections tied back to the yellow flash of Konoha. Even the Uchiha clan, once wary of him, was now willing to stand by him. If Minato ever chose to run for Hokage, Danzo realized, there would be no one left in the village with enough power or influence to stop him. In that moment, Danzo finally understood why Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, held Minato in such high regard. Despite the crisis that had befallen the village, Hiruzen continued to support Minato, refusing to allow the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki onto the battlefield. Perhaps, even Hiruzen had come to see Minato as an unstoppable force. Danzo seethed with frustration. How could he allow this to continue? Especially now, as Minato had repeatedly opposed Danzo's decisions, particularly on the matter of the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. His opposition had caused Danzo to lose face in the eyes of the villagers. Even worse, it had given the Uchiha clan, long suppressed by Danzo's root organization, a much-needed opportunity to regain their strength. The thought of it sent Danzo's anger spiraling further. So, when Shibi Abiram spoke, Danzo's reaction was swift and cold. He immediately issued his orders. Shibi, however, found himself powerless to act. There was nothing he could do but watch as Danzo gathered his forces. Within a short time, Danzo, leading 30 Jonin, slipped out of Tsurumura Castle under the cover of darkness. As he watched Danzo and his contingent depart, Shibi's unease deepened. A small incident just moments before had triggered his sense of dread. Danzo had stubbornly insisted on drafting 2 Uchiha Jonin into the ambush against the Kazekage of Sunagakure. There was little Shibi could do about it. All he could do was issue orders to his clan's ninjas, urging them to spread the word and heighten their vigilance. At the same time, Sunagakure's ANBU, who had been covertly observing Tsurumura Castle, had noticed the departure of so many Konoha Jonin and immediately relayed the information. Land of Rivers. The long-abandoned Tetsuya Mine. This was Sunagakure's base, located at the farthest edge of the Land of Rivers. Unlike the bustling Konoha camp, this place felt eerily quiet and desolate. Apart from the main command tent and the storage tents, there were few others scattered around. This was part of Sunagakure's strategy for this mission, splitting their forces into smaller, more manageable units. Inside the main tent, the 3 leaders of the main forces, Chiyo, Pakura, and Michikawa, had gathered. With Raza absent, Chiyo, as the elder, naturally held the highest rank. However, she wasn't inclined to speak first, leaving the composed Michikawa to step into the role of the de facto commander, as had been arranged by Raza. The ANBU messenger arrived with an update. Everything was proceeding according to the Kazekage's plan. Konoha's forces had walked right into the trap. Danzo, the elder of Konoha, had led most of the Jonin out of Tsurumura Castle, while Sunagakure's main force had already been positioned around the castle, ready to execute the plan of breaking their forces into smaller units. With a single command, they would be able to surround Konoha's defenders. Has the timing for the attack been confirmed? Chiyo asked, her gaze still fixed on the messenger. Yes. According to the Kazekage's instructions, we plan to launch the attack 6 hours after Danzo departs from Konoha. All orders have been issued, and our ninja will arrive at their designated positions. It will take a little time. Since it's confirmed, issue the order, Chiyo said, her voice steady. Hi! Within moments, Michikawa's orders were transmitted via Sunagakure's ANBU network. Let's move out as well, Chiyo said, preparing to stand. Suddenly, Pakura, who had remained silent up until this point, spoke. How many people from Konoha's side have gone to Raza? Chiyo and Michikawa exchanged puzzled looks, but Michikawa, ever the curious one, responded. According to the intelligence we received, Danzo, the elder from Konoha, left with 30 Jonin. I didn't expect Kazekage-sama's prediction to be so accurate. He truly understands this Konoha elder. Michikawa's words of praise were met with a sharp reply from Pakura. Even so, for the leader of his village to personally serve as bait is far too reckless, Pakura said, her voice laced with frustration. Michikawa was stunned by her reaction, confused as to why Pakura would say this. Hadn't this already been decided? However, Chiyo, with her sharper, more perceptive instincts, seemed to understand. Her eyes widened in realization, but she quickly composed herself, offering a reassuring smile to Pakura. "Don't worry. Since Raza is confident, we should trust him as comrades. Besides, this message has already reached him. If he knew he couldn't win, he wouldn't take such a risk." Pakura nodded slightly, her expression softening as she absorbed Chiyo's words. With that, the three of them left the tent, leading their subordinates to prepare for departure. In the blink of an eye, the land of rivers was thrust into motion, setting the stage for the coming battle. Meanwhile, in the land of grass, within the heart of Kusagakure, in a building that resembled a massive, foreboding tower, several wooden barred prison cells lined the stone walls. This was the facility where the land of grass kept its prisoners, a place of darkness and isolation. Deep within the dim, oppressive cells, there was a small room with only 2 palm-sized windows, through which scant sunlight filtered in. A young girl, her striking red hair a sharp contrast to the bleak surroundings, lay curled up on a simple wooden bed, clutching her head in her hands. She wore a plain long dress that resembled prison attire, her bare arms and thighs marked with bite wounds. Her feet were bound with chakra-sealing chains, rendering her powerless. The air was heavy with the stench of despair and neglect. Suddenly, hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor. As the footsteps drew closer, 2 Kusagakure guards in ninja attire arrived at her cell. Without a word, they swiftly unlocked the bars and barked at the girl, their faces cold and unfeeling. "Come with us." The girl offered no resistance. She had long grown accustomed to such treatment, her spirit dulled by the countless torments she had endured. Without hesitation, the guards quickly escorted her through the long, dreary corridor. Eventually, they reached a door leading outside, where bright sunlight poured in from the open air. As the girl stepped into the light, the blinding rays forced her to squint. She took a moment to adjust her eyes, but when she finally opened them fully, she was met with a sight beyond her imagination. It was as if the world itself had fallen into chaos. A vast sandstorm, dark and swirling, engulfed Kusagakure, obscuring the once vibrant green landscape. The storm's powerful winds howled, and the once familiar surroundings were now cloaked in a menacing haze. It was only then that the girl noticed the fear etched on the faces of the Kusagakure ninjas who had once tortured her. Their stoic expressions had vanished, replaced with panic and confusion. "What's happening?" A flicker of life returned to the girl's otherwise vacant eyes as she tried to make sense of the situation. Just then, a voice broke through the tension, addressing the scene unfolding around them. "Is this the one?" Yes, Kazekage-sama. This is the orphan of the Uzumaki clan, her name is Hannah." Hannah Uzumaki, her head slightly raised, turned her gaze toward the source of the voice. From above, descending like a divine being, a man with short red hair and an air of overwhelming authority floated down before her. His presence was commanding, and the very earth seemed to bow in respect. Chapter 79, Hannah Uzumaki. It was no wonder that she would one day become the future mother of Karen. Standing before Raza was a young girl who bore a striking resemblance to Karen, around 80% alike. She appeared to be no older than 13 or 14, youthful and fragile. Her hair and pupils were both the distinct red of the Uzumaki clan. She wore what seemed like prison garb, and her exposed skin bore the marks of past torment, bite marks that marred her innocence. Her posture was tense, and the aura of fear and uncertainty that radiated from her made it clear she was on edge as she nervously met Raza's gaze. This sight caused Raza to frown slightly, a wave of displeasure crossing his face. He turned to the high-ranking Kusagakure officials standing nearby and spoke with authority. "Release her restraints." "Why, yes." The officials, sensing the weight of Raza's displeasure, scrambled to comply. They hastily ordered the prison guards to unlock Hannah's shackles. Clang! The sound of the chakra-sealing handcuffs hitting the ground echoed in the air. For a moment, Hannah, who had been trembling with fear, seemed to undergo a change. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and she stared at Raza in shock. Her lips parted, as if she was trying to speak but could find no words. This shift in her behavior did not go unnoticed. Everyone present, including Raza, observed it carefully. Raza, curious but unperturbed, did not wait for an explanation. He had already obtained what he came for, and there was no need to linger in Kusagakure any longer. A cloud of golden sand began to form beneath their feet. Hannah, taken aback by the sudden movement, lost her balance and fell onto her butt. The sand, however, was soft, cushioning her fall. Raza, without a second glance at the Kusagakure ninjas, ignored the hidden resentment in their eyes as he dispelled the barrier sealing the village. With a slow, deliberate motion, he ascended into the sky, leaving Kusagakure behind. In this world, those with absolute power could act without explanation or justification. Soon, Raza's figure was nothing more than a speck in the distance, disappearing from sight. The Kusagakure ninjas, their faces twisted in hatred, watched the departure. But they wasted no time, quickly sending all the information they had gathered to Konoha. A little while later, in a forest 10 kilometers from Kusagakure, Raza did not rush back to the village. Instead, he waited quietly in the forest, allowing time to pass calmly. Not long after, the figure of the black scorpion appeared beside him, moving with remarkable speed. After glancing briefly at Hannah, the orphan of the Uzumaki clan, who looked somewhat dazed, the black scorpion spoke. Reporting to Kazekage-sama, the bait has been set. Good, then let's head out as well. As you command. In the forest, 12 shadowy figures moved swiftly, clearing the path ahead for Raza. Raza summoned the cloud of gold dust beneath them once more, lifting them slowly into the air. He didn't rush. Even though the bait had been set, they still needed to wait for the fish to bite. Their journey would take them across the land of grass, into the land of fire, through the land of rivers, and finally back to the land of wind. The reason they weren't taking a more direct route through the land of rain was simple: the constant rainy weather there would significantly hinder Raza's abilities, especially in the crucial moments ahead. This battle was too important, and Raza wasn't about to leave any vulnerabilities open. Finally, he turned his attention to Hannah, who stood beside him. Unlike the fear and unease she had shown earlier, when the shackles were still on her, Raza now noticed that the girl regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and surprise. As Raza observed her, Hannah became aware of his gaze, and a slight panic flickered in her expression. This intrigued Raza further. "You don't seem to be afraid of me." Hannah, startled by the comment, hesitated for a moment. Her lips trembled slightly before she nervously spoke in a voice low enough that only the two of them could hear. "Chakra. Your chakra is very warm." The answer took Raza by surprise. He recalled that Karen, from the future, was known for her exceptional sensory abilities, including the mind's eye of the Kagura, which allowed her to sense chakra. But that was just chakra, wasn't it? It seemed this girl, Hannah, an orphan of the Uzumaki clan, could even sense the sage energy within his body. Raza raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. "You can sense the power inside me?" Hannah nodded cautiously but then raised her voice slightly, speaking with more confidence. "Yes. It's unlike any chakra I've ever sensed. It's as warm as the sun." "As warm as the sun?" Raza's expression shifted slightly as he processed her words. The idea of his chakra being compared to the sun was unexpected. Yet, he didn't press her further on the matter. Instead, he reached into his belongings and pulled out some food and water, placing them in front of Hannah. "Your body is too weak. Eat something to replenish your strength. We'll have another battle soon." Hannah's eyes widened in surprise, but without a second thought, she grabbed the food and water, hastily consuming it in large bites, much like another Uzumaki from the future might have done. Raza had initially wanted to tell her to eat more slowly, to comfort her in some way, but after a brief moment of contemplation, he chose not to say anything further. It wasn't that he didn't care, it was simply that he understood the girl's circumstances. He wasn't one for unnecessary words, especially not now. Time passed slowly, the air around them quiet and still. The world around them moved at its own pace, while Raza and Hannah remained suspended in their moment. Around 2 hours later, the familiar figure of Black Scorpion appeared again, his presence sharp and commanding. Kazekage-sama, the intel from the ANBU reports that Danzo from Konoha, along with 30 Konoha Jonin, is attempting to intercept us halfway. Hannah, who had just regained some of her strength, froze at the mention of the 30 Jonin. Although she still didn't fully understand the significance, the term was enough to make her stomach churn with fear. It brought back memories, the destruction of her homeland, the fall of the Uzumaki clan. Raza, however, remained composed, his voice smooth as he responded. 30 Jonin-level ninjas, huh? Quite a bold move. Let's proceed as planned. Let's see who is the mantis and who is the cicada. As you command, Kazekage-sama. Hannah remained silent, staring wide-eyed at the unfolding situation. She didn't fully grasp the plan or its significance, but an overwhelming sense of unease began to settle in her chest. Then, Raza's voice broke through the silence again. You must have figured it out by now. I am Raza, the fourth Kazekage of Sunagakure. The reason I'm here personally is to take you back to Sunagakure. Sunagakure needs the power of the Uzumaki clan. Hannah's eyes dimmed as his words sunk in. She had long known that her greatest worth was tied to the Uzumaki bloodline that ran through her veins. It wasn't the first time she had been used for that very reason. So, will you join Sunagakure? Raza asked, his voice unbothered. Hannah, lost in her painful memories, spoke softly but with a sorrowful undertone. Sunagakure. Kusagakure. To me, there's no difference. She hugged her knees tightly, curling up into herself as if to shut out the world. Raza watched the girl for a moment, sensing the deep sadness that lingered in her heart. After a brief pause, he spoke in a low voice, his words carrying a rare sincerity. I don't like making empty promises, but there's one thing I can assure you, in the name of the Kazekage. In my village, no one will ever think of hurting you. Hannah's red eyes flickered, a mixture of both hope and uncertainty flashing within them. Raza didn't press her further, sensing her emotional conflict. Focus on recovering your strength for now. We have another battle ahead. But don't worry. Everything is proceeding as planned. He paused, his gaze narrowing slightly as he considered the situation. He had no intention of sending Hannah back to Sunagakure alone. He didn't fully trust his subordinate's abilities to protect her or to handle the incoming confrontation with Danzo. If he was going to use himself as bait, he needed Hannah by his side. Only then would he have a chance to ensure the plan unfolded the way he intended. Chapter 80, Perception. At the border between the Land of Fire and the Land of Rivers, near the edge of the Land of Rain, Danzo led a group of Konoha Jonin, positioned in a carefully planned ambush. While the border between the Land of Fire and the Land of Rivers stretched long and vast, it was the quickest route for the Sunagakure ninja to return to the Land of Wind. Danzo had considered the geographical advantages and strategically chosen this location. He had also thoroughly reviewed his intel, concluding that it would be impossible for the Sunagakure forces to travel through the Land of Rain to reach the Land of Wind. The Kazekage's bloodline techniques, including his sand manipulation and magnet release, sand gold, would be rendered ineffective in the rain-drenched terrain of the Land of Rain. However, ever the cautious tactician, Danzo had positioned Jonin with sensory and reconnaissance abilities along the border, ensuring he could track any movement from the Sunagakure forces. After hours of tense waiting, a report finally came in. Sunagakure ninja have appeared. Above the vast forest, an eagle soared high in the sky. Its intelligent gaze was sharp and calculating, revealing that this was no ordinary bird. This eagle was a summoned creature, part of the ninja world's common arsenal of summons. While not typically known for their offensive prowess, summoned eagles, like dogs or cats, were invaluable for their reconnaissance abilities. The eagle's flight skills, keen vision, and unmatched ability to track movement over long distances made it an ideal scout. It could detect an enemy from as far as 10 kilometers away, far surpassing the sensory abilities of most ninjas. Hidden in the shadows of the forest below, Danzo, concealed among the trees, turned to the oil girl, Ryoma, awaiting confirmation. Has it been confirmed? Danzo asked, his voice calm yet filled with the tension of the moment. Ryoma, nodding, answered, after the eagle spotted them, I verified with the insects. It's definitely the fourth Kazekage of Sunagakure, and the red-haired girl accompanying him matches the description of the Uzumaki clan orphan, Hannah, as reported by Kusagakure. Danzo's expression remained impassive, though his mind raced. How far are they now? Less than 8 kilometers. Then let's proceed. Understood. At the border of the land of fire, high in the sky, Raza stood upon his sand cloud, his gaze steady as he surveyed the land below. He had been traveling for over 4 hours, and by the afternoon, he had reached the border of the land of fire, just about to cross into the land of rivers. The terrain was unique, serving as a crossroads between 3 countries. Beyond the land of fire, the landscape seemed surreal. The surface of the land of rivers appeared to have been peeled away, creating a steep, sheer cliff-like drop that left the entire region feeling as though it were situated in a massive canyon. The reason for the many rivers in the land of rivers became apparent. The land's low-lying terrain gathered water from the surrounding nations. As the saying went, water flows to lower ground, and the land of rivers was a prime example of this natural phenomenon. Raza's sensory abilities, though not extraordinary, immediately sensed the hidden danger in the area. The low-lying land felt like a trap, waiting for prey to wander in. It was as if the land itself was designed to entrap anyone foolish enough to enter without caution. Raza, ever the strategist, knew that he was the mantis and that Konoha was the cicada. Yet, he would not let his confidence lead him blindly into a trap. He signaled to his sand cloud to descend, bringing him and Hannah down into the forest below to conceal themselves from any prying eyes, including the Konoha summoning eagle high above. The eagle, which had been monitoring their movements, lost track of them as they descended into the trees. Moments later, 12 Sunagakure Jonin arrived, respectfully standing by Raza's side. Despite their experience, they were no less cautious, and Raza did not waste time asking them about the dangers of the forest ahead. Instead, his focus turned to Hannah, the young girl by his side. Hannah, Raza began, his tone firm yet thoughtful. I know you have excellent sensory abilities. Can you sense how many Konoha ninjas are ahead, and their general positions? The question caused a stir among the Sunagakure Jonin, who looked at Hannah with surprise. This girl, the orphan of the Uzumaki clan, was already showing powers beyond what they had expected. Could it be that the Uzumaki clan had such abilities? Their thoughts raced, but Raza's calm demeanor remained unshaken. Hannah hesitated for a moment, gathering her thoughts before she formed a hand seal. Closing her eyes, she focused on the chakra signatures ahead. The Sunagakure Jonin watched in silence, all building as they witnessed Hannah's talent unfold. 1, 2. Hannah murmured softly, her voice trembling slightly as she began to count. Soon, her eyes snapped open, her expression serious as she relayed the information she had sensed. 31 people in total, she began, her voice gaining steadiness as she spoke. Their chakras are very large and divided into 4 squads. The first and second squads each have 9 members, the third squad has 7, and the fourth squad has 5. The first squad is 3 kilometers away, the second is 4 kilometers away, the third is 5 kilometers away, and the fourth is 7 kilometers away. She paused for a moment, her gaze distant as if trying to sense more deeply. One person in the fourth squad has an exceptionally large chakra, Hannah continued, her voice lowering slightly, and he has a very cold aura about him. Her body trembled slightly as she spoke, the fear evident in her tone. Well done. He praised, his voice filled with genuine admiration. Hannah's head tilted slightly, but she didn't respond. The 12 Sunagakure Jonin, hidden behind their masks, couldn't conceal the astonishment in their eyes. It wasn't just Hannah's bloodline that made her valuable to the Kazekage, but this sensory ability, which no one in their village could match. With a glance at his subordinates, Raza continued. It seems Konoha's ninjas are trying to use their squads to delay you all one by one, so they can focus on me, the Kazekage. One of the Jonin, his voice tinged with uncertainty, spoke up. Then, Kazekage-sama, what should we do now? Raza's lips curved into a slight smirk. Heh, since Konoha's ninjas have already made such a plan, we can't let them down by not playing along with their little show. You'll accompany Konoha's ninjas and play with them. It would be even better if you could deal with them. For a moment, the 12 covert squad members stood still, processing the command. It wasn't that they were unwilling, but the power disparities seemed enormous. They were just 12 against 30 Konoha ninjas. The numbers seemed against them, and yet Raza's confidence was unwavering. Sensing their hesitation, Raza's expression shifted, becoming more resolute. He calmly pressed his hands together, and his chakra began to pulse in a distinctive rhythm. The energy around him grew more intense as he tapped into his senjutsu powers. Sage Art, Shikaku's avatar Tanuki Warrior. With that, a burst of golden sand and chakra enveloped him, forming a towering, ethereal samurai figure around his body. This powerful transformation, a combination of his natural abilities and senjutsu, was designed to protect him and give him overwhelming strength. The golden samurai towering beside him glowed like a protective guardian, a reminder of the Kazekage's extraordinary power. In the dense forests of the Land of Rivers, the Sunagakure ninjas suddenly came to a halt. Their movements were smooth and synchronized as they blended seamlessly into the surroundings. The Konoha ninjas lying in ambush, hidden in the trees and brush, were taken by surprise. They hadn't expected their presence to be detected so swiftly. Ryoma Aburame, standing near Danzo, tensed up, sensing the shift in the air. Have they discovered us, Danzo-sama? Danzo's gaze hardened, and a quiet, almost imperceptible smirk curled his lips. So what if they have? The knowledge of their location didn't faze him. He had long seen Raza as a thorn in his side, especially since a secret about him had been leaked, making the Kazekage an even greater target in Danzo's mind. Regardless of this, I will deal with this Kazekage. But more importantly, the Uzumaki clan. If I can control the orphan, Hannah, I might be able to harness the power of the Nine Tails for Konoha. The thought of this new advantage filled Danzo with renewed resolve. With the death of Kushina after the appearance of new Jinchuriki, Danzo would not only be able to lower Minato's position but also control the power of Nine Tails. Danzo's eyes narrowed as he gazed toward the towering cliffs in the distance. He had sensed the sunken, almost suffocating aura of the Land of Rivers, and he knew this was a strategic location to confront the enemy. He turned to the 4 Konoha ninjas behind him, each one carrying a large scroll. Let's begin. Hi! Chapter 81, White Zetsu's Tailing. Deep within the forest. On a massive tree branch in a secluded area, a figure emerged from the ground as if the earth itself had given birth to it. Pale white from head to toe, its head bore a distinctive spiral-like design, resembling a mask. In a voice both childish and curious, it muttered, Why is Danzo here? This figure was none other than White Zetsu, a subordinate of Uchiha Madara, tasked with keeping a close watch on Danzo. For months, White Zetsu had been monitoring Danzo from the shadows under Madara's command. Yet, perhaps sensing that he was being watched, Danzo had been exceptionally cautious. There was no visible trace of Hashirama's cells or the Sharingan during this period, making it difficult to confirm any suspicions. However, White Zetsu's keen sensory abilities had already detected something unusual. The elder of Konoha was concealing something on his right arm. A powerful seal had been placed upon it, one even White Zetsu could not fully perceive. As he contemplated this, movements in the forest drew his attention. Hidden Konoha ninjas were on the move. A total of 25 shinobi split into 3 squads, making their way toward the Land of Fire's border. They scaled a towering 100-meter cliff before vanishing into the dense forest. White Zetsu's eyes gleamed with interest. Oh, so a mission is underway? Expanding his sensory perception, he instinctively reached out to assess the situation, only to recoil in shock. I've been discovered. At the border of the Land of Fire. Within the depths of the forest, an overwhelming surge of Sage Mode energy radiated from Raza. The ground beneath the shinobi trembled before transforming into yellow sand. The grains gathered and shaped themselves into enormous tanuki-like figures clad in black armor. One wielded a sword, while the other bore a massive shield, their forms reminiscent of the mighty Shikaku itself. This was an advanced technique created by Raza, Dragon Vein Shikaku's avatar splitting technique. Sage Art, Shikaku's avatar Tanuki Warrior. By merging the abilities of Sage Art, Magnet Release, and Sand Control techniques, Raza had refined the method, replacing the original limitations of his bloodline limit. With reduced chakra consumption and the immense energy boost from Sage Mode, he further reinforced these creatures with a layer of sand iron armor, enhancing both their durability and agility. What were once mere puppets with the strength of Chunin had now ascended to special Jonin-level power. The presence of these Tanuki warriors sent waves of unease through the gathered shinobi. Even the Jonin, hidden behind their masks, couldn't fully suppress their astonishment. This power. Raza's piercing gaze swept over them. Now, do you have confidence in handling those Konoha ninjas? A spark of fervor ignited within the 12 Jonin. Overwhelmed by the sheer strength before them, they dropped to one knee in unwavering loyalty. Leave it to us, Kazekage-sama. Though they hadn't counted the exact number of Tanuki warriors, one fact was clear: they now held the advantage over Konoha's forces. With a Kazekage this formidable, how could they not feel a surge of pride and excitement? At that moment, Hannah, who had been monitoring the situation from a distance, quietly murmured, "The Konoha ninjas are approaching." Raza's lips curled into a faint smile as he nodded. I'll leave it to you." As soon as his words fell, the 90 Tanuki warriors surged forward. Their massive bodies shook the earth with each step, charging ahead like an unstoppable tidal wave toward the incoming Konoha shinobi. The 12 covert operatives remained behind, acting as backup. Meanwhile, Raza lifted himself into the air, standing atop a floating cloud of golden sand. From above, he could oversee the battlefield, ensuring precise control over his warriors. Although he had imbued the Tanuki puppets with a semblance of life through Sage Mode's inorganic reincarnation abilities, they still lacked true intelligence. Like traditional puppets, they required a guiding hand to maneuver them. Thankfully, with the fusion of magnet release and sand control, Raza didn't need to rely on cumbersome chakra threads like ordinary puppet users. His control was swift, seamless, effortless. Just as he and Hannah ascended, a sudden, sharp gasp escaped Hannah's lips. Her body stiffened. Her pupils dilated in shock. A wave of dread washed over her face, turning her complexion pale. Raza immediately noticed. His sharp instincts flared, and he demanded, "What's wrong?" Hannah, her fingers trembling, pointed toward a specific direction in the forest. "Over there, there's an incredibly strange chakra presence." Raza's expression darkened. His gaze followed her pointing finger, but before he could fully focus, It's gone." Hannah's voice was barely a whisper, yet the weight of her words pressed heavily on the atmosphere. Raza's eyes narrowed. A vanishing chakra signature at such a crucial moment. If someone was watching, he needed to confirm who it was. What kind of chakra was it? Hannah, still shaken, took a deep breath, trying to recall the sensation. It was evil, cold. I'd never felt anything like it before. It was as if, she hesitated, her voice quivering, as if it was trying to pull my soul away. Raza's expression darkened further. Evil and cold. The description alone wasn't enough to pinpoint the intruder. But the sinister aura she described, it was familiar. Too familiar. Then, as if a thought had suddenly struck her, Hannah hurriedly added, "Besides being evil and cold, I also sensed an immense life force. Oh! And I think the owner of this chakra had sensory abilities too." At that moment, the fragmented clues in Raza's mind snapped into place. Among all the enemies he knew, shinobi who possessed overwhelming vitality, heightened sensory perception, and extraordinary speed, there was only one that fit the description. White Zetsu. Madara's informant. Why is White Zetsu here? Is he monitoring me, or Danzo? Raza pondered, his mind racing. Even more concerning than white Zetsu was the possibility that black Zetsu was lurking nearby as well. If that was the case, things could take a far more dangerous turn. But right now, there wasn't much he could do. After a brief moment of contemplation, Raza turned to Hannah. From now on, keep tracking that chakra. If it appears again, inform me immediately. Hi. Though still nervous, Hannah nodded with determination. At the same time, down below, on the forest floor, the Tanuki Warriors and the Suna Shinobi finally collided with the advancing Konoha forces. What are these monsters? The Konoha ninjas had heard the heavy, earth-shaking footsteps long before reaching the top of the cliff. The ominous rumbling from deep within the forest had been a warning in itself. Yet, as seasoned jonin, bound by duty and Danzo's direct orders, they had no choice but to press forward. Among them, 2 Uchiha clan members were strategically placed in separate squads. Though they harbored deep resentment toward Danzo, the battlefield left them no room for defiance. Their Sharingan eyes flickered ominously as they scanned the incoming threat. Massive tanuki-like creatures emerged from the shadows of the trees. 3 to 4 times the height of an average man, these colossal figures were entirely composed of sand. Their black iron armor gleamed under the faint light filtering through the canopy, and in their hands, they wielded immense swords and shields. The sheer pressure they exuded was suffocating. A deep unease settled among the Konoha shinobi. Instinctively, the jonin leading the squad signaled for a halt, their minds racing for a strategy. But before they could act, the Tanuki warriors had already locked onto them. Raza, hovering in the sky above, gave a simple command. Attack! Boom! One of the Tanuki warriors surged forward with a speed that defied its massive frame. In a single leap, it closed the distance, its enormous sword raised high above its head. A thunderous roar echoed through the forest as it swung its blade down with devastating force, aimed directly at the Konoha shinobi. Chapter 82, Tanuki Warriors. Be careful. The Konoha jonin at the front felt the overwhelming power radiating from the massive creature and instinctively stepped back. Boom! The several-ton Tanuki warrior crashed down with earth-shattering force. The ground trembled violently, sending shockwaves rippling through the forest. Its enormous blade cleaved through thick trees, each as wide as 2 people embracing, slicing them cleanly in half. Cold sweat trickled down the foreheads of the Konoha jonin. If that strike had landed on them, they would have been split in 2 without a doubt. Fortunately, as elite shinobi, they had numerous techniques at their disposal. Leave it to me. One of the jonin quickly stepped forward, fingers forming a rapid series of seals. Earth-style, swamp of the underworld. The ground beneath the Tanuki warrior softened in an instant, morphing into a deep, viscous swamp. The creature's massive weight caused it to sink, rendering it immobile. It's over! Let's move huh? Just as the jonin was about to issue the next command, his voice caught in his throat. His eyes widened in disbelief at the sight before him. You've got to be kidding me! From the depths of the forest, a horde of massive Tanuki warriors emerged, marching like an unstoppable army. Their towering figures filled the jonin's entire field of vision. Then, without hesitation, they launched an all-out assault. Boom! 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 The battlefield erupted into chaos. Trees shattered, the ground cracked, and the air filled with the roars of the colossal warriors. Below the cliff, hidden in the shadows, Danzo furrowed his brows at the deafening commotion above. What's going on? By his calculations, Konoha's jonin, outnumbering the Suna shinobi 2 to 1, should have been able to overwhelm them with ease. His orders were merely to disrupt and divert Sunagakure's forces, not engage in an all-out war. Yet, from the sounds of the battle, it was clear that something had gone terribly wrong. Ryoma Aburame, standing beside him, was equally unsettled. I'll go take a look. Forget it, we're going up together, Danzo ordered, stopping him before he could move. At this point, there was no point in staying hidden. With that, Danzo led Ryoma up the cliffside, leaping swiftly across the rocky terrain until they reached the Land of Fire's territory. But the moment they stepped onto solid ground, they were met with a sight that even Danzo hadn't anticipated. The once thriving forest had been devastated. Countless Tanuki warriors, each towering like a giant, rampaged across the battlefield. Their massive blades and shields clashed against Konoha's elite shinobi, shaking the ground with every impact. The Konoha forces fought back fiercely, unleashing a barrage of ninjutsu. Flames roared, wind blades sliced through the air, torrents of water crashed down, lightning arced across the battlefield, and earthen dragons surged forward. The sky and land alike were filled with a relentless storm of jutsu. Yet, despite this relentless assault, most of their techniques barely fazed the monstrous Tanuki warriors. In close combat, the Konoha shinobi found themselves utterly outmatched. Their only advantage lay in one critical weakness, the Tanuki warriors' speed. Relying on their superior agility, the Jonin desperately evaded the onslaught, looking for any possible opening to strike back. What the hell is going on? Danzo stood frozen, his sharp eyes scanning the battlefield. Ryoma, equally stunned, suddenly noticed something. Danzo-sama, look! In the sky! Danzo instinctively looked up. Suspended in the air atop a shimmering cloud of golden sand stood two figures. One was unmistakable, the Fourth Kazekage, Raza. Beside him floated a red-haired girl. Danzo's eyes narrowed. That hair color. She's from the Uzumaki clan. And that's the Fourth Kazekage of Sunagakure. 10 kilometers from the battlefield. A ripple disturbed the soil as white Zetsu emerged from the ground, a trace of lingering fear in his expression. Whoa, that was terrifying. Someone actually sensed me. Good thing I ran fast. Otherwise, Madara-sama definitely wouldn't have let me off easy. Right now, Uchiha Madara was operating in complete secrecy, carefully enhancing the powers of the Sage Body and working toward the execution of the Eye of the Moon plan. A single misstep could jeopardize everything. But what is that guy Danzo even doing here? Whatever. I just need to report this to Madara-sama. With that, White Zetsu sank back into the earth, disappearing once more. The border of the Land of Fire. High above the dense forest canopy, Raza, the Fourth Kazekage, and Danzo, Konoha's elusive elder, stood in silent opposition. Neither seemed eager to make the first move. Danzo-sama. No rush, Danzo interjected calmly. Things didn't go exactly as expected, but as long as the target hasn't escaped, we proceed as planned. As he spoke, his right hand clenched instinctively. Heh! Meanwhile, down on the battlefield, Konoha's battle-hardened Jonin were finally adapting to the Tanuki warriors' overwhelming presence. Don't waste chakra. Fire style, water style, and wind style don't work on these creatures. Use lightning style to destroy their bodies and earth style to restrict their movements. With this realization, the shinobi swiftly adjusted their strategies. However, while many possessed multiple chakra natures, not all specialized in lightning or earth style. Among the 25 Jonin present, only about half could effectively counter the creatures, while the enemy's numbers stood at a staggering 90. Danzo-sama, I'm going in to help. Ryoma Aburame assessed the worsening situation and made his decision. Proceed. Without hesitation, Ryoma formed a sequence of hand seals. His chakra surged, and in the next instant, an ocean of insects poured from his body like a living tidal wave. The dark swarm moved as one, surging toward the Tanuki warriors. The Suna Jonin, well-versed in the Aburame clan's techniques, reacted instantly. This was the Aburame clan's feared jutsu, insect deception jutsu. A tide of parasitic insects surged forward, a writhing black wave moving with deadly precision. If left unchecked, these insects would latch onto their prey, devouring chakra until nothing remained. Realizing the threat, the Suna shinobi stationed behind the Tanuki warriors wasted no time. They leaped onto the massive creatures' backs, forming hand seals in swift succession. Wind style, wind cutter jutsu. Fire style, fire dragon bullet. Sunagakure's shinobi, predominantly wind style users, unleashed razor-sharp gales that split through the air with surgical precision. The few fire-style users among them combined their flames with the wind, amplifying the destruction tenfold. A deafening roar followed as the combined elemental assault tore through the battlefield. Trees were reduced to splinters. The ground cracked and burned. The very air shimmered from the heat. The raging inferno met the oncoming insect swarm, obliterating thousands in an instant. Yet the insects continued to pour forth, undeterred. And so, the full-scale battle between Kusagakure and Sunagakure erupted completely. The only ones who had yet to make a move were their leaders, Raza and Danzo. Hannah, untrained in direct combat, hovered anxiously at Raza's side. But Danzo paid her no mind. He remained motionless, standing atop the highest tree canopy, his lone visible eye cold and calculating. He was waiting. Having studied every piece of intelligence on the Fourth Kazekage, Danzo knew that only by restricting his movements could he stand a chance at subduing him. That was why, from the moment he had been assigned as Konoha's commander against Sunagakure, he had ensured his barrier squad was always close at hand. They were already in position. He just needed a little more time for them to set up the barrier. But just as he was about to give the signal, a voice rang out, sharp and mocking, slicing through the battlefield's chaos. As expected of a rat lurking in the sewers, always sneaky, always scheming. So, how much more time do you need? Chapter 83, A Trap. Raza's words made Danzo's pupils contract sharply. He looked up to see Raza hovering in the sky, his gaze filled with disdain. Danzo's face tensed, his expression turning grim. I'd been discovered. Being called a rat in the sewers did little to rattle him. He was not the type to be provoked by mere insults. Remaining composed, he tilted his head slightly and squinted his lone eye at Raza. You're mistaken, Kazekage of Sunagakure. I came here to resolve the misunderstanding between us. A misunderstanding? Raza raised an eyebrow, genuinely taken aback by Danzo's shamelessness. Still, he saw no harm in playing along. If anything, it might lower Danzo's guard. And what misunderstanding would that be? Seeing that Raza had taken the bait, Danzo's tone became more natural. Naturally, it concerns the Third Kazekage. I never laid a hand on him. Oh? Is that so? Raza's expression remained unreadable. His gaze shifted to Danzo's right arm and right eye. If that's the case, why don't you reveal your right arm and right eye for me to see? Danzo's left eye narrowed, his face darkening. It was clear now. Sunagakure was determined to pin the death of the Third Kazekage on him. If that was the case, there was no longer any reason for pretense. His voice grew cold. I'm curious. How did you come to know the secrets of my body? Initially, Raza had intended to give a vague answer. But upon noticing the growing intensity in Danzo's expression, he suddenly changed his mind. Do you really think I'd tell you? Even without naming anyone, a statement like that would immediately make Danzo suspect that Konoha had a spy. For all his shortcomings in diplomacy, Danzo was an expert in internal power struggles. Sure enough, his expression darkened further. Slowly, he placed his left hand on his right arm. With no attempt to hide his intent, his voice carried a murderous resolve. In that case, I'll just have to capture you and extract the truth from your mind myself. Now! At Danzo's command, for barrier squad shinobi stationed at the four corners of the surrounding forest sprang into action. They unfurled large scrolls onto the ground and swiftly formed hand seals, channeling chakra into them. Ninja art, for violet flames formation. And, it is a non-canon technique used in many fanfics. If you have not already known, most of the author's knowledge is deriving from other fics instead of original source. Still, good if the story not being tied with canon. In an instant, four beams of purple light shot into the sky, extending outward to form massive walls of burning violet flames. The barrier, stretching as wide as a football field, sealed off the battlefield. This dramatic shift naturally drew the attention of both Konoha and Suna shinobi. Yes! Danzo-sama's plan worked. Aburame Ryumai, brimming with confidence, turned to look at the Suna shinobi, expecting to see panic on their faces. But what he saw instead unsettled him. The Suna shinobi were completely unfazed. They continued fighting as if nothing had changed. Inside the barrier. Seeing the barrier fully activated with Raza trapped inside, Danzo finally let out a breath of relief. Yet, for some reason, a flicker of unease crossed his eyes. Despite being sealed within the 4 violet flames formation, Raza showed no signs of distress. Instead, the only one who looked truly shaken was the red-haired Uzumaki orphan beside him. A strange sense of dread crept over Danzo, but as he felt the immense power coursing through his right arm, his confidence quickly returned. Lifting his chin like a victorious commander, he declared, "Kazekage, if you tell me who leaked my secrets, I might consider changing my course of action." Raza's expression shifted slightly, a helpless look flashing across his face. Dear Lord, why does he have to use these cringeworthy lines? But just as quickly, Raza regained his composure. Oh? So you think you've won? Danzo felt a drop of sweat roll down his temple, but he maintained his confident smirk. This barrier technique was developed by the first Hokage himself, for violet flames formation. It can even trap a tailed beast. Without my command, Kazekage, you cannot escape. To his surprise, Raza merely shook his head and smiled, his gaze filled with something unsettling, anticipation. No, Danzo. You're mistaken. I am not the one trapped with you. You are the one trapped with me. Meanwhile, Land of Rivers, Tsurumura Castle. On the crumbling walls of Tsurumura Castle, Shibi Aburame stood pale-faced, his gaze locked on the distance. Around him, most of the Konoha shinobi were sweating, hands trembling as they clutched their kunai. A cold mist, laced with a suffocating killing intent, slowly crept around the castle. By the time Shibi's insects warned him of an attack, it was already too late. From 3 directions, Sunagakure's forces had completely encircled Tsurumura Castle, and their numbers continued to swell. At that moment, even a fool could understand, Konoha had walked into a trap. This had been Sunagakure's true objective all along. They had drawn Danzo and Konoha's top jonin away, only to launch a crushing ambush. Among those standing on the castle walls was a young Shursui Uchiha. From his vantage point, he could see through the mist-covered river channels outside the fortress. Everywhere he looked, Sunagakure shinobi, their forehead protectors gleaming in the dim light, emerged like ghosts from the fog. Their numbers were at least twice that of Konoha's forces. What was even worse, Sunagakure had brought far more jonin. A Konoha jonin, gripping his kunai so tightly his knuckles turned white, turned anxiously to Shibi. "Shibi-sama, what do we do? Even if we send a message to Danzo-sama now, it'll be too late." At that moment, Shibi Aburame fully grasped the gravity of their predicament. He wasn't about to send his men to die in vain. With a bitter smile, he gave his orders. "Tell everyone to abandon all supplies. Chunin will lead the retreat while jonin provide cover. Move in teams of 4 and escape as fast as you can. Save as many as possible. And send word to the village if it is not already too late." The shinobi's pupils shrank, but after clenching his fists, he nodded firmly. Understood. With the command given, Tsurumura Castle descended into chaos as Konoha's shinobi rushed to evacuate. Outside the castle, 3 figures watched the scene unfold. Pakura, Michikawa, and Chiyo observed the disarray in Konoha's ranks. Chiyo smirked. "Now is our chance. Attack!" Back at the barrier. Unaware of the disaster befalling Konoha, Danzo stood tall, his gaze locked onto Raza with unwavering confidence. "Enough talk. Once I take you down, all of your arrogance will become nothing but a joke." His lone eye fixated on Raza as his left hand reached for his right arm. His fingers moved steadily to unravel the bandages. "Didn't you want to see my right arm? Very well. I will grant your wish." The final layer of bandages fell away. A golden sealing device, used to suppress the immense chakra within his arm, detached and clattered to the ground. Then, his monstrous right arm was revealed. It was unnaturally pale and lifeless, resembling the limb of a corpse. 5 crimson Sharingan eyes lined its surface. Combined with the one in his right eye socket, that made 6 in total. The grotesque sight sent a shudder through Hannah. Her face paled as she struggled to even look at it. On the other hand, Raza quickly overcame his initial disgust. Instead of fear, a gleam of excitement flickered in his eyes. 5 Sharingan on his arm. 1 in his right eye. And combined with Hashirama's cells. This mission might yield far more than I expected. Smirking, Raza clasped his hands together, preparing to strike. Chapter 84, Raza vs. Danzo, Part 1. Outside the 4 purple flame formation. After adapting to the battlefield and shedding blood in the process, the Jonin of Kusagakure finally figured out how to counter the massive Tanuki Warriors. However, understanding their weaknesses was one thing. Defeating them was another. Their absurdly strong defenses and overwhelming destructive power made it nearly impossible for the Jonin to take them down in a short time. Just as the Konoha Jonin were struggling to hold their ground, the colossal Tanuki creatures suddenly crumbled into sand. What's going on? The Konoha Jonin were instantly filled with confusion. Their first instinct was that Danzo, inside the barrier, had forced the Kazekage to cancel his technique. A wave of relief spread among them. But before they could even exhale completely, the next scene made their eyes widen in shock once more. The sand from the fallen Tanuki warriors did not disperse. Instead, it swirled violently like a raging sandstorm, gathering together and merging into an enormous beast the size of a mountain. A deep, guttural roar tore through the battlefield. Roar! The force of the howl created a shockwave that stirred up a violent gale, sending debris flying in all directions. The root ninja, trained extensively in intelligence gathering, immediately recognized the technique. It was the same jutsu that had once left even Jiraiya and Minato helpless. Meanwhile, the Sunagakure shinobi seized the opportunity and swiftly retreated, leaping onto the massive monster's head. Without hesitation, the towering form of the Shikaku's avatar raised its enormous tail before swinging it with devastating force. A torrential rain of sandpaper shuriken hurtled toward the Konoha ninja. Inside the 4 purple flame formation, the monstrous figure looming over the battlefield was impossible to miss. With his wealth of experience, Danzo quickly deduced the reasoning behind Raza's actions. His gaze shifted briefly toward the colossal beast in the distance before he spoke, his tone calm and calculating. It seems controlling that many puppets is no easy task. But dividing your attention while fighting me? That is bold. Raza snorted coldly, his voice sharp with confidence. If I were facing Minato or Jiraiya, I wouldn't dare. But against you? This is more than enough. As soon as he finished speaking, Raza leaped down from his golden dust cloud, landing gracefully atop the treetops of the dense forest. His eyes gleamed with amusement as he smirked at Danzo's cold expression. I hope you won't disappoint me. Don't let this fight end too quickly. Danzo's face darkened. His fingers formed a rapid hand seal. You won't be disappointed. Wind style, vacuum wave. The battle had begun. Like the cutting edge of a kamaitachi, a razor-sharp wind blade surged forward, slicing through the air with deadly precision. Humph! Shikaku's shield. Raza remained motionless as a massive sand barrier, shaped in the image of the one-tailed beast, materialized from thin air. The barrier intercepted the vacuum wave completely. The wind technique failed to advance even an inch. The trees on either side of the battlefield, however, were not so lucky. Severed cleanly, they collapsed with a thunderous crash, shaking the earth beneath them. What an impressive defense! Danzo's face remained grim, but his body moved without hesitation. His figure became a blur within the barrier as he repositioned himself. Raza's Shikaku's shield was strong, but it could only block attacks from one direction at a time. Realizing this, Danzo quickly formed another hand seal. Wind style, vacuum serial waves. Countless wind blades surged forward in rapid succession, slicing through the air from all directions as Danzo moved, surrounding Raza in a storm of razor-sharp currents. Boom! 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 Two more Shikaku's shields materialized at an angle, forming an impenetrable wall around Raza. The attack struck the barriers but failed to break through. Danzo narrowed his eyes. Is this a bloodline limit? Compared to jutsu that required hand seals, a bloodline limit granted overwhelming advantages in speed and execution. Danzo frowned slightly, already forming a new seal to counter. However, before he could react, his sharp senses warned him of something deadly. His instincts screamed at him to move. From the three Shikaku's shields, countless spikes suddenly shot outward, gleaming with a golden hue. Sage Art Magnet Release Gold Sand Shuriken. The golden projectiles tore through the air at terrifying speed. Danzo immediately dashed across the battlefield, dodging the barrage with precise movements. His footwork remained steady, but his expression darkened as he noticed something unusual. The shuriken did not scatter after missing. Instead, they twisted midair, locking onto him like guided missiles. What? This was the result of Raza's magnet release enhanced by Sage Chakra. Unlike before, when he had to refine his chakra into magnetic energy, he now relied on natural energy itself to generate the magnetic force. The result was perfect precision and control over his attacks. The golden shuriken chased Danzo relentlessly. Despite the rising tension, Danzo's hands moved without hesitation. Wind style, great breakthrough. A violent gust erupted from his mouth, generating a powerful shockwave. The gale blasted the pursuing shuriken away, scattering them into the forest. Trees were uprooted and thrown into the air, debris flying in all directions. Above, on her floating cloud of gold sand, Hannah squinted through the swirling dust. She could no longer see what was happening and had to rely on her sensory abilities. Be careful. Under normal circumstances, as a surviving member of the Uzumaki clan, she would never warn Danzo. Konoha had abandoned her people when Shikaku fell. But after seeing the grotesque abomination that was Danzo's right arm, she understood one thing. If she fell into his hands, her fate would be worse than death. Just as her warning left her lips, a white blur shot out from the storm of dust. Danzo moved at blinding speed, wielding a long sword, his lone Sharingan eye gleaming with murderous intent as he lunged straight at Raza. Die! Confidence filled Danzo's mind. His blade was only inches from Raza's throat when a golden mass surged between them. In an instant, an enormous hand of gold sand formed and clamped down on Danzo's sword, stopping it midair. Gold sand hand. Danzo's eyes widened. What? He tried to yank his sword free, but it refused to budge. It was as if the metal had fused with the golden sand itself. Danzo did not waste time. Abandoning the weapon, he lunged forward with his bare hands and swung a punch directly at Raza's face. Boom! His fist never landed. A massive sand fist surged forward, striking Danzo before he could react. Boom! The force of the impact sent him hurtling backward. Though he crossed his arms in defense, the sheer power of the blow shattered his guard. Blood spewed from his mouth as his body was flung across the battlefield. Yet, despite the obvious damage, his expression remained eerily calm. There was no pain. No struggle. From above, Hannah's eyes narrowed as realization dawned upon her. Careful. It's a clone. His real body is below. But the warning came an instant too late. Beneath Raza, a completely unharmed Danzo emerged, his body materializing like a ghost from the shadows. His right hand, covered in the cursed markings of the Uchiha, shot forward, reaching for Raza's back. A victorious smirk tugged at the corner of Danzo's lips. The battle is over. But before he could make contact, a voice, calm, yet chilling, echoed through the air. Oh really? Danzo's eyes widened. What? An unnatural gleam flashed before his vision. Too late. From behind Raza, Danzo's own abandoned sword shot toward him, controlled effortlessly by magnet release. The blade sliced through the air, aiming straight for his head. With Raza blocking his line of sight, he never saw it coming. Slash. Chapter 85, Raza vs. Danzo, Part 2. Amidst the wreckage of their fierce battle, the forest lay in complete disarray. Shattered trees and scattered debris marked the aftermath of their clash. High above, atop the canopies of two towering trees, Raza and Danzo stood facing each other once more, their eyes locked in a silent, deadly standoff. Drip. Danzo felt a sharp sting on his cheek and instinctively reached up to touch it. His fingers came away stained with crimson. Despite his swift reflexes, Raza's blade had grazed him, leaving a thin, bleeding cut. What a troublesome ability! He had long heard of Sunagakure's magnet release and the legendary sand controlling techniques developed by the Second Kazekage. However, facing Raza's mastery firsthand was proving far more challenging than he had anticipated. The precision and speed of Raza's golden dust were unlike anything he had encountered before. Still, Danzo's confidence remained unshaken. The power of his arm and the secrets hidden within his eye gave him an edge. Yet, he knew it was not yet time to reveal those trump cards. The Sharingan was far too precious to waste prematurely. With a calculated calm, Danzo swiftly formed a series of hand seals. Summoning Jutsu. A massive summoned beast materialized within the vast barrier, its enormous frame occupying nearly 1/8 of the enclosed space. The creature had yellow fur, an elephant-like trunk, and sharp, tiger-like claws. This was Danzo's summon, Baku, the mythical devourer. The battlefield shifted instantly. Danzo and Baku launched a coordinated assault, their movements perfectly synchronized. Baku raised its trunk and opened its gaping maw, unleashing a monstrous gust of wind. The suction was overwhelming, pulling trees, sand, and debris into its voracious mouth. Even Raza struggled to maintain his footing, his body being dragged toward the beast. Meanwhile, Danzo maneuvered around the chaos, closing in on Raza from the opposite side. Using a summon to restrict my movement before going in for the kill, huh? Raza mused, his voice calm despite the dire situation. He tested his control over his golden dust, but the sheer force of Baku's suction rendered his efforts futile. The golden particles were swallowed effortlessly, leaving Raza with fewer options. However, Raza noticed a critical flaw in Danzo's strategy. Even Danzo himself seemed unable to fully resist Baku's suction, forcing him to take a wide detour around the battlefield to flank Raza. Seizing the opportunity, Raza stopped resisting altogether. Instead, he allowed himself to be pulled toward Baku, his body hurtling toward the beast's gaping maw. Danzo froze momentarily, confusion flickering across his face as he tried to decipher Raza's intentions. Just as Raza was about to be swallowed, he raised his arm. In an instant, a massive golden staff materialized in his grasp, glowing with an otherworldly aura. Sage Art Magnet Release, Dragon Golden Staff. With a powerful, decisive swing, Raza drove the immense golden staff straight into Baku's mouth. A deafening shriek erupted from the beast. Gra! Baku thrashed violently, its massive body writhing in agony. Trees toppled like matchsticks as the creature's movements shook the battlefield. Taking advantage of the chaos, Raza leaped onto Baku's head and pressed his right hand firmly against its skull. Such an excellent summon, wasted on you. Shwoop! In an instant, waves of sand surged from beneath Baku, enveloping its massive body entirely. Sealing marks began to appear one after another, glowing faintly as they spread across the beast's form. Great Burial Seal! Danzo moved to intervene, but it was too late. He could only watch helplessly as his own summon, instead of restraining Raza, was sealed away by him. The once mighty Baku vanished into the sand, leaving behind an eerie silence. Danzo tightened his grip on the shuriken in his hand, his expression darkening as he fully realized just how troublesome his opponent was. It was clear that relying solely on his own strength would not be enough to defeat Raza. If that was the case, Danzo finally made his decision. It was time to unveil his trump card. He reached up and removed the bandages covering his right eye, revealing a fully matured three-tomo Sharingan. The crimson eye gleamed with an ominous light, and the moment it was exposed, Raza sensed a shift in Danzo's aura. It grew colder, more oppressive, and far more dangerous. Oh! No more holding back? You've even exposed the Sharingan in your right eye now, Raza observed, his tone laced with both curiosity and caution. Danzo wielded a kunai, his breath infused with chakra. Wind-released chakra flowed into the blade, forming an invisible, razor-sharp edge of wind. Wind-style, vacuum blade. His expression was cold and unyielding as the crimson Sharingan locked onto Raza, analyzing his every move. This is the eye of my late comrade, Kagami Uchiha. Though I despise the Uchiha, I cannot deny the power of the Sharingan. Danzo stated, his voice devoid of emotion. Hearing this, Raza grew more serious, though a smirk played on his lips. Are you sure Kagami gave it to you? Looks to me like you're the kind of guy who wouldn't even spare his own friends. Raza retorted, mocked with a smirk. It wasn't that Raza feared the three-tomo Sharingan. No, his real concern was whether Danzo possessed the Mangekyo. After all, he had no intelligence regarding Kagami's abilities, and the unknown was always the greatest threat. Danzo noticed Raza's momentary distraction. His gaze sharpened, but he scoffed, unwilling to appear weak. Humph. Dedicating everything to the village was Kagami's dream. I simply fulfilled it for him. Raza widened his eyes, genuinely perplexed by Danzo's audacity. If Danzo had been born in his original world, he would have made a formidable politician, perhaps even rivaling a certain blonde raccoon. You really are shameless. Alright, let's see how powerful Kagami Uchiha's eyes really are. As he finished speaking, Raza pressed his hands together. Unlike all his previous jutsu, this one was not a single-direction attack. At that moment, the entire battlefield inside the barrier began to shift dramatically. The ground transformed into flowing waves of sand, swallowing the trees of the surrounding forest whole. Flowing sand waterfall. Danzo immediately leaped into the air, using a floating tree trunk as a makeshift raft to maneuver across the shifting sand like a lone canoe. His movements were swift and precise, but the golden spikes that burst forth from the swirling sand below were relentless. Gold Dust Imperial Funeral. Countless golden spikes erupted like thorn tentacles, striking at Danzo as he darted across the sand. Danzo's three-tomo Sharingan spun rapidly, its crimson glow intensifying as it analyzed every movement on the battlefield. His taijutsu skills, already formidable, were now amplified by the Sharingan's enhanced perception. He weaved through the onslaught of golden spikes with ease, his movements fluid and precise. Any spike that proved too difficult to evade was swiftly cut down by the razor-sharp wind blade of his vacuum blade technique. At this moment, with the power of the Sharingan fully unleashed, Danzo's strength had surged to another level entirely. Before, Raza had only considered him at the level of an elite jonin. But now, Danzo was approaching the peak of what a Kage-level shinobi could achieve. His speed, precision, and tactical awareness had all reached new heights, making him a far more dangerous opponent than he had been moments ago. Even Raza felt a hint of pressure. His seemingly unstoppable magnet release, which had dominated the battlefield earlier, was now proving ineffective against Danzo's enhanced abilities. The Sharingan's predictive power and Danzo's refined combat skills were neutralizing Raza's attacks with alarming efficiency. Truly, the Sharingan was one of the greatest cheat codes in the world of shinobi. Of course, with Raza's power surpassing even that of most Kage, Danzo was still merely a nuisance. If Raza played his trump card, he could end the fight immediately, but he didn't. He was waiting for a single, decisive strike. From the moment Danzo had appeared and revealed his Sharingan, Raza had already decided. Those 5 Sharingan on Danzo's arm, the one in his right eye, and the Hashirama cells on his right arm, they would all belong to him. There was no way he would allow Danzo to recklessly waste them like he did against Sasuke, treating them as mere expendable tools. At that moment, Danzo closed the distance to Raza, his Sharingan spinning as he attempted to analyze the chakra flow within Raza's body. He sought to predict Raza's next move, to gain the upper hand in their deadly dance. But what he saw made him freeze for a brief moment, long enough to abandon his attack entirely. Chapter 86, Raza vs. Danzo, Part 3. Among the two great dojutsu of the ninja world, both the Sharingan and the Byakugan can perceive the flow of chakra within a ninja's body. However, the key difference lies in how they function. The Sharingan's perception is based on its ability to detect the presence of chakra itself. In other words, while the Sharingan can observe the movement of chakra inside a ninja, it cannot pinpoint chakra points. If the target lacks chakra altogether, then the Sharingan perceives nothing. At this very moment, that was the exact predicament Danzo faced. Upon activating the power of his right eye Sharingan to analyze Raza's chakra flow and prepare for any hidden techniques, he was stunned to discover that he saw absolutely nothing. This inexplicable sight caused his pupils to contract. Without hesitation, he abandoned his advantageous position, where he had already closed in on Raza, and swiftly retreated. At the same time, his spinning Sharingan worked frantically to analyze the technique Raza had used. No chakra, still no traces of chakra. Whether it was the sand under Raza's control or the gold dust swirling around, there was no visible chakra within them. A deep sense of unease crept over Danzo once again. In the past, he would have withdrawn immediately, prioritizing caution. But now, as his gaze lingered on Raza, his peripheral vision caught sight of the Uzumaki orphan hovering in the sky. The enormous prize dangling before him made retreat an impossible option. In that case, dodging the encroaching sand-gold barrier, Danzo secretly formed a series of hand seals. On his right arm, a three-tomo Sharingan began to spin. Raza, ever perceptive, noticed it instantly. After all, this was the moment he had been waiting for. The real battle was about to begin. Whoosh! Despite having previously withdrawn, Danzo abruptly launched forward again. With incredible agility, he weaved past all of Raza's attacks and swiftly closed the gap between them. As Danzo approached, Raza extended his hand, summoning a golden iron staff, swinging it directly at Danzo's wind blade. Although Raza did not possess the Monkey King Inma as the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen did, his mastery over magnet release, combined with inorganic reincarnation and chakra absorption abilities, allowed him to forge the gold dragon staff. In terms of power, it was in no way inferior to Inma. Clang! The golden staff and the wind blade clashed in a fierce collision. The sharp edge of the wind blade scraped against the solid metal, creating an eruption of sparks that scattered in every direction. While wind release is renowned for its sharpness, its greatest strength lies in its cutting ability. However, when it comes to raw destructive force and penetrative power, it falls short compared to lightning release, let alone Raza's staff, which, infused with Senjutsu energy, possessed the ability to absorb chakra. Visibly, the wind chakra infused into Danzo's wind blade was drawn into Raza's golden staff and absorbed completely. How is this possible? Danzo's pupils contracted. Before he could react, an overwhelming force came crashing down upon him. Gold Dragon Staff, expand. Under the influence of inorganic reincarnation, the Senjutsu energy within the staff transformed into gold dust and iron sand, causing it to expand tenfold in an instant. Its weight surged beyond 10 tons. What? This is Hiruzen's technique. The sheer impact smashed into Danzo's arm, causing his expression to twist in pain as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, Danzo was still relatively young at this time, just shy of 60. He had yet to become the aged veteran who later fought Sasuke. This level of injury was not enough to take him out of the fight. Moreover, his past battles against Hiruzen had given him the necessary experience to use the momentum from his fall to evade the incoming staff at the last moment. Oi, it's not over yet? Despite its immense size, now half a meter thick, over 20 to 30 meters long, and weighing more than 10 tons, Raza wielded the gold dragon staff with ease, thanks to his magnet release. However, brute force was not the only way he could use it. Gold Dragon Staff, extend. In an instant, the staff in Raza's grip elongated like a whip, thrusting toward Danzo with terrifying speed. Boom! 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 Each strike carved deep craters into the ground. This won't do. I can't keep going like this. Even though Danzo was younger than he would later become, his chakra reserves were depleting at an alarming rate. A significant portion was already being used to suppress the Hashirama cells in his arm, while another portion was needed to maintain the Sharingan's power. If he dragged this battle out any longer, he would lose. He had to act now. With this thought, Danzo faced the incoming gold dragon staff and swiftly formed a series of hand seals. Wind style, vacuum great sphere. A massive blast of wind erupted, sending the colossal staff flying and forcing Raza to retreat several steps. Danzo seized the opportunity. He leaped into the air, using the extended gold dragon staff as leverage to propel himself toward Raza. The sudden burst of chakra in his body pushed his speed beyond its usual limits. Raza noticed instantly and swung the staff to knock Danzo away. However, in midair, Danzo quickly formed another set of hand seals. The three-tomo Sharingan in his right eye spun wildly, morphing into the shape of a great windmill. So, that's what is going on. In that instant, Raza found his answer. He had wondered whether the Sharingan's dojutsu could affect his senjutsu energy. The answer was yes. A sharp, excruciating sensation of being torn apart flooded his senses. It felt as if his body had been split into 5 separate pieces, his head, arms, legs, and torso disconnected from each other, leaving him suspended in a surreal state of detachment. Snap! As the Jinjutsu took hold, Danzo exhaled deeply, landing atop Raza's immobilized gold dragon staff. His gaze locked onto Raza's motionless form, and in a low, controlled voice, he spoke. This is my dear friend Kagami Uchiha's Mangekyo Sharingan Dojutsu, Kuna 10. It severs the connection between the target's brain and body, rendering them completely paralyzed. He was not wrong. At this moment, Raza could no longer feel any link between his thoughts and his physical form. It was as if his consciousness drifted in an empty void, cut off from everything. Yet, he did not panic. From the moment he noticed Danzo's subtly weaving hand seals, he had already activated his elemental transformation. In a world like Naruto's, where no known intelligence existed on such a technique, there was no way for anyone to predict or counter it. In this form, he was untouchable, immune to harm. That made this the perfect opportunity to analyze the dojutsu and figure out how to break free. With that in mind, he steadied himself completely. Danzo, watching Raza remain utterly still, finally allowed himself to relax. Slowly, he stepped forward. Kagami, even in death, your eyes continue to serve the village. Murmuring under his breath, Danzo advanced along the length of the gold dragon staff, the distance between them shrinking with every step. Strange, intricate sealing marks appeared on both of his hands. This was the root's forbidden self-curse sealing mark. The Mangekyo Sharingan's Jinjutsu required a continuous flow of chakra to sustain and would not last forever. Only by applying a sealing jutsu on Raza could he ensure absolute control over him. But just as Danzo's palm was about to make contact, locking Raza in place. SHHK. A sharp, jagged Shikaku spear tore through Danzo's body, causing bright red blood erupted from the wound and splattering across the golden staff. Chapter 87, Raza vs. Danzo, Part 4. Gwa! A mouthful of blood burst from Danzo's lips as he stared in disbelief at the sand spear impaling his chest. This was the first time Kagami's Sharingan had ever failed. His vision blurred as he looked up, meeting Raza's unwavering gaze. How is this possible? Everything Danzo had learned indicated that only perfect Jinchuriki could break free from the Mangekyo Sharingan's Jinjutsu. Raza was no perfect Jinchuriki. Yet, what he wielded now was pure Senjutsu energy. This battle had given Raza a deeper understanding of dojutsu. Like all Jinjutsu, those cast by dojutsu manipulated an opponent's chakra flow, distorting their 5 senses. To break free, one needed overwhelming chakra to disrupt the illusion or external chakra interference to restore balance. What made dojutsu-based Jinjutsu so potent was the superior quality of the chakra used. It likely stemmed from yin release, a fundamental aspect of yin-yang release. But now, Raza realized that his senjutsu energy existed on an even higher plane than yin chakra. Although he had lost control of his body, he no longer needed to refine chakra within himself. By simply sensing and drawing in the surrounding natural energy, he could effortlessly shatter the Sharingan's illusion. With this revelation, Raza knew one thing for certain: Mangekyo Sharingan Jinjutsu would never trap him again. Danzo staggered before him, blood pouring from his wound. Expression cold and merciless, Raza wrenched the Shikaku spear free. Go find your answers in hell. High above, Hannah let out a slow breath as she hovered on her floating cloud of gold dust. Between Sunagakure and Konoha, she held no strong allegiance. But Danzo, that man, with his arm full of stolen Sharingan, made her wary of Konoha itself. She was just beginning to relax when something in her senses shifted. Her pupils contracted sharply. She looked down, and saw the impossible. "Watch out!" Her warning rang through the air, but it was already too late. The bleeding Danzo, the man who had just been spewing blood onto the ground like a fountain, suddenly disappeared like an illusion. In that instant, a long blade erupted from Raza's chest. How is this possible? Raza turned his head in disbelief. Behind him stood Danzo, his expression cold and grim, gripping the hilt of the sword that had pierced straight through Raza's body. His voice was chilling as he spoke. "Nothing is impossible. From the moment you dared to look directly at my Sharingan, I suspected you had a way to counter its Jinjutsu. And when I couldn't detect any chakra inside your body, I was even more certain." Danzo smirked. "So, you were just waiting for me here all along. What a shame, Before Danzo could finish speaking, a flash of crimson filled his vision. Desert treasure blade. Slash. A blade of sand, fine as dust yet sharper than steel, materialized in an instant and severed Danzo's right arm at the shoulder. Raza caught the severed limb in one swift motion. Danzo's pupils shrank in shock. His eyes filled with disbelief as another mouthful of blood spewed from his lips. Instinctively, he reached to reclaim his lost arm, but before he could react. Boom! Raza's foot struck his chest, sending him flying backward. Still gripping the severed limb, Raza's gaze settled on the eerie face of Hashirama embedded in the flesh. He could feel the unstable chakra pulsating within it. A small smile tugged at his lips. "Looks like I won the gamble." Without hesitation, the Shikaku seal spread from his palm, attempting to suppress the rampaging Hashirama cells. But then, something unexpected happened. The seal, which had never failed before, only managed to contain the cells for a brief moment before they surged wildly once more. Seeing this, Raza swiftly waved his hand, conjuring a dense cloud of sand to obscure everyone's vision. Under the cover, his right hand pressed the Kama seal onto Danzo's severed arm. Ugh! Raza had never planned to kill Danzo here. After all, letting such a pest continue to plague Konoha was far more entertaining. But that didn't mean he held back on his kick. The impact shattered 3 of Danzo's ribs, sending his body crashing into the ground. A plume of sand exploded around him. Right now, Danzo was not the same man who had survived after the Uchiha massacre. At this point in time, Sharingan was still an incredibly valuable resource to him, and sacrificing even one to activate Izanagi was an extravagant price to pay. Having already burned one Sharingan to rewrite his death, Danzo had immediately deactivated the technique. But now, he realized his complacency had cost him dearly. How was this possible? He had definitely pierced through Raza's heart. He had aimed directly for the kill to ensure there was no mistake. Yet now... Pain racked his battered body. The successive injuries and severe chakra depletion had pushed him to a dangerously weakened state. Coughing up more blood, Danzo clutched his bleeding right shoulder and looked up toward the sky. What he saw made his breath hitch. Raza was gone. In his place, a massive golden sand sphere floated in the air. Danzo's spinning three-tomo Sharingan finally caught the details. Inside the enormous hovering sphere of yellow sand, his severed arm was suspended in midair. The eerie green glow of Hashirama's chakra was fading, as if something was draining it away. At that moment, Danzo understood. He had been tricked. This young Kazekage from Sunagakure, his true goal had never been Danzo himself. From the very beginning, he had been after the power of the first Hokage and the Uchiha's Sharingan embedded in Danzo's arm. And more than that, he knew about Izanagi. How? A chilling thought crept into Danzo's mind. Could the leak have come from within the Uchiha clan? Otherwise, how could Raza possibly know so much? But who? Uchiha Fugaku? Someone else? Moreover, the Kazekage possessed an ability that allowed him to absorb chakra, even the chakra from Hashirama's cells. Did that have anything to do with why his chakra flow was unreadable? A web of unanswered questions tangled in Danzo's mind, but this was not the time to dwell on them. Right now, the only thing that mattered was escaping. The battle was lost. If he stayed any longer, he would only be marching toward his death. Steeling himself, Danzo glanced around before stumbling toward the edge of the barrier, moving as fast as his battered body allowed. But before he could take more than a few steps, a voice rang in his ears. "Oi, rat! Where do you think you're going?" Chapter 88, The Final Phase. A voice, dark and menacing, like something from the depths of hell, sent a violent tremor through Danzo's entire body. With the last of his strength, he gripped a kunai and thrust it toward Raza. Slash! The blade effortlessly pierced Raza's back, yet it did nothing to stop his outstretched arm. Arg! Danzo let out a gut-wrenching scream as his right eye, the Sharingan, was mercilessly gouged out. At that moment, he finally understood. Earlier, he had driven a blade through Raza's heart, yet the man remained standing as if nothing had happened. Now, looking at him closely, Danzo realized the truth. Raza's body was not entirely human. Half of it was sand. The abilities of the Hozuki clan. No, the Aburi clan? A chilling realization hit him. Raza had come for his Sharingan all along. Calmly, Raza retrieved a small bottle of saline solution and dropped the freshly plucked Sharingan inside. Danzo's pupils shrank in horror. The memories his Sharingan had captured replayed in his mind, and as he looked at the man before him, a terrifying conclusion surfaced. His body trembled, and he instinctively took several unsteady steps backward. Pressing a trembling hand against his bleeding, empty eye socket, he weakly thought. I see. So, he has the power to steal bloodline limits? But Danzo did not dare to say it aloud. He knew that as long as he remained silent, there was still a sliver of hope for survival. However, if he spoke those words, his fate would be sealed. Then, something unexpected happened. Danzo, do you want to live? Stunned, Danzo struggled to keep his balance. Panting heavily, he rasped. What? What do you mean? You're not going to kill me? Raza smirked, a chuckle escaping his lips. Why would I kill you? Leaving someone like you alive in Konoha benefits Sunagakure far more. Danzo was lightheaded from blood loss, but he immediately recognized the opportunity. Cough. Cough. Name your conditions. If he survived today, he could reclaim everything he had lost. Raza, on the other hand, had no reason to refuse such an easy chance to take his spoils. Even as a Kazekage, he wanted everything his enemy possessed. First, hand over the summoning scroll for Baku. Without hesitation, Danzo formed a hand seal. A scroll materialized before them, landing with a soft thud. Raza manipulated his sand to grab it, unrolled it briefly, then nodded in satisfaction. I've heard Konoha has a sealing scroll that contains numerous forbidden jutsu. Hand it over. Danzo's face darkened. His vision blurred, his body swayed, and blood trickled from his lips as he croaked. The sealing scroll is in the village. I don't have it with me. Oh? Is that so? The spear of Shikaku materialized once more in Raza's grasp. In that case, what a pity. Danzo gritted his teeth. He had no choice. With great reluctance, he pulled out another scroll. This is not the full sealing scroll, but it contains some of the jutsu recorded in it. Raza's sand lifted the scroll from his weakened hands. After skimming through its contents, a satisfied smile crept onto his face. Edo Tensei. 8 gates. Impressive. These are quite the treasures. Beaming, Raza stored the scroll away. That's enough. You may leave now, but only you. Danzo's pupils shrank. He understood what Raza meant. But without the slightest hesitation, he turned and walked away. Outside the 4 violet flames formation, Konoha's shinobi remained locked in combat against the forces of Sunagakure and the colossal avatar of Shikaku. Against the avatar's absolute defense, the Konoha Jonin found themselves at a severe disadvantage. Its towering form seemed almost invincible, and with Sunagakure's shinobi providing cover, sheer numbers alone were not enough to turn the tide. Though Konoha had more soldiers on the battlefield, overwhelming their enemies was proving nearly impossible. Worse still, they had already suffered heavy casualties. Any more losses, and their morale would crumble beyond repair. Just then, in the distance, the 4 violet flames formation dissipated, drawing everyone's attention. Had Danzo emerged victorious? Or was it Raza? That question loomed over every Konoha shinobi as they watched the scene unfold. Raza, suspended on a floating cloud of golden sand, advanced slowly. The Konoha forces scanned the area behind him, searching for any sign of Danzo, but the space was empty. Instead, 2 Uchiha Jonin noticed something unusual. Atop the golden sand, a red-haired girl stood with an expression of sheer disgust. In her grasp, she held a severed, pale white arm. Embedded in the flesh were 4 distinct Sharingan, their scarlet glow unmistakable. The 2 Uchiha Jonin stiffened, their hands trembling in fury. There was no mistaking it, that arm did not belong to Raza. The truth was obvious. Danzo had stolen Sharingan from their clan through unknown means and implanted them into his own arm. And now, Sunagakure had taken possession of it. The realization spread quickly among Konoha's Jonin. There was only one conclusion to be drawn: Danzo was most likely dead. If even his arm had fallen into the Kazekage's hands, his fate needed no further explanation. But this was not the time to dwell on his demise. The real concern now was survival. Unlike the grim faces of Konoha's forces, the shinobi of Sunagakure were overjoyed. Their Kazekage had triumphed. And now, only one task remained: eliminating the remaining Konoha forces. Raza wasted no time. He raised a hand, his voice steady and commanding. Finish the rest of them. Yes. With Raza entering the battlefield, the tide shifted instantly. Outnumbered or not, Sunagakure's forces now held the overwhelming advantage. The battle turned into a massacre. One by one, Konoha's shinobi fell, forced into a desperate retreat. Within 10 minutes, it was over. The battlefield lay silent, painted in the aftermath of destruction. The results were staggering. Against Raza's overwhelming strength, only 5 Konoha Jonin managed to escape. Among them, by sheer coincidence, were the 2 Uchiha shinobi. Some of Raza's men seemed eager to pursue, but he raised his hand once more, halting them. Enough. Do not chase prey that has nothing left to lose. Yes. The mission had been a resounding success. Of the 12 elite Jonin from Sunagakure's covert operations unit who had accompanied Raza, nearly all had sustained only minor injuries. Not a single one had perished. Such a lopsided casualty count had never been seen before in Sunagakure's conflicts against Konoha. For the first time, Sunagakure's shinobi felt as though their village stood on equal footing with their longtime rival. They gathered around Raza, their expressions filled with admiration. One of the covert unit members, Sandrat, stepped forward, his voice brimming with respect. Congratulations, Kazekage-sama. You have slain Danzo and avenged the third Kazekage in our village. The others quickly echoed his words, their voices carrying a rare sense of triumph. But Rasa shook his head. No. I let Danzo go. Eh? 12 Jonin stared at him, stunned into silence. Not missing a beat, Rasa took advantage of their confusion to further cement his authority. Remember this, he said, his tone unwavering. The strongest fortress is always destroyed from within. As he spoke, his gaze shifted to the severed white arm still clutched in Hannah's hands. Chapter 89, Evolution and Conclusion. The 12 Jonin of Sunagakure were momentarily confused. However, when they followed Rasa's gaze, their expressions stiffened. A realization dawned upon them, and their eyes flickered with admiration and awe as they looked at their leader. The 5 Konoha ninja who had just escaped, especially the 2 from the Uchiha clan, came to mind. Alright, clean up the battlefield. Since these fallen ninja were all Konoha Jonin, there might be some unexpected rewards. Hi! As the 12 Jonin dispersed, the kunoichi beside Raza, Hannah, looked down at the severed arm she was holding. Her face twisted in disgust. Suppressing a wave of nausea, she lowered her voice and asked, "Are you sure it is fine to let that Konoha ninja go? What if he exposes your secrets?" Even as a ninja, Hannah understood the value of intelligence in this world. But Raza merely waved a hand dismissively. Of course, he had considered that risk. However, the benefits of letting Danzo escape far outweighed the potential drawbacks. First, Raza's strength was constantly evolving. Any intelligence gathered about him would soon become obsolete. If someone relied on outdated information to deal with him, they would only be walking into a trap. Second, Konoha with the Uchiha and Konoha without them were 2 entirely different entities. Raza had no intention of helping Konoha rid itself of Danzo, that festering tumor. What if, without Danzo, Konoha never eradicated the Uchiha clan? That would be a devastating loss for him. And finally, even if Danzo leaked every detail about him, attracting countless enemies, Raza no longer cared. In fact, he could only smirk. Danzo had unknowingly handed him the greatest advantage in this world. Danzo had shown no restraint in his experiments on Raza, implanting only the purest form of Hashirama's cells into him. That reckless act had delivered Raza an unimaginable gift. With that thought, Raza raised his right hand. For the first time, the comma mark on his palm shifted. A black line extended from one corner of the rhombus-shaped seal, stretching until it formed a single black dot beneath his middle finger. As the transformation took place, Raza closed his eyes, attuning himself to the natural energy surrounding him. Within his perception, deep within the earth, the largest chakra source in this world flickered, its vast presence now revealing a tiny green dot. And what did that green dot signify? A small, delicate sapling slowly sprouted from Raza's palm. At that moment, clarity struck him like a bolt of lightning. Raza finally understood why Hashirama Senju's wood release was so overwhelming. Because Hashirama's wood release did not consist of ordinary trees. Its essence was the God Tree, the power of the Ten Tails itself. And the God Tree, or rather, the Ten Tails, was the collective embodiment of all chakra in this world. For an instant, whether it was an illusion or reality, Raza felt something profound, a connection to the very world around him. It was as if the energy of the land, the sky, and all living beings pulsed in harmony with his own. Beside him, Hannah's breath hitched as her gaze locked onto the small green sapling sprouting from Raza's palm. Her eyes widened in sheer disbelief. A trembling hand covered her mouth as shock coursed through her veins. As a survivor of the Uzumaki clan, she knew exactly what this meant. Land of Fire. Deep within a vast, ancient forest. A golden figure flickered through the dense woodland, moving at unimaginable speed. Each step carried him over 1,000 meters in an instant, his form blurring like a streak of lightning. Everywhere he landed, intricate formulas appeared, etched onto rocks, trees, and the very earth itself. This man was none other than Minato Namikaze. Ever since mastering the Flying Thunder God technique, Minato had been leaving his marks all across the shinobi world, ensuring that no battlefield was ever too far, no ally ever out of reach. With this, he had become the fastest support force in history. Yet despite his speed, his expression remained grim. Still too slow. It's still too slow. Half an hour ago, an urgent order had arrived from the Hokage, detailing the situation unfolding in the Land of Rivers. The intelligence scroll had been brief but dire. The moment Minato grasped the gravity of it, he had abandoned all thoughts of rest and pushed himself to his absolute limit. But even then, he knew, deep in his heart, that he was already too late. By the time the report had reached Konoha, an hour had passed. And in war, an hour was more than enough to change everything. Minato's speed was fearsome. With the Flying Thunder God, he covered a full day's worth of travel in under 10 minutes. But just as he reached the borders of the Land of Fire, something caught his attention. Without hesitation, he teleported. At the very edge of the Land of Fire, dozens of Konoha shinobi were retreating in chaos. Their clothes were torn, their faces marred with exhaustion, and their formations utterly broken. Among them, a familiar figure stood out, his old friend, Shibi Aburame. But Shibi was in a dire state. Blood soaked his robes, his movements sluggish as he barely managed to shield his comrades while leading the retreat. The moment they saw Minato, a collective sense of relief washed over the battered shinobi. Thank goodness, it's Minato-sama. Reinforcements. We are saved. Minato. But before their relief could fully settle, movement stirred behind them. The Sunagakure ninja had caught up. Without a second thought, Minato stepped forward, placing himself between his comrades and their pursuers. His sharp blue eyes locked onto the advancing enemy, prepared for combat. But the Sunagakure ninja did not attack. Instead, the moment they laid eyes on him, their expressions twisted in alarm. That look. It's the yellow flash of Konoha. Damn it! He got here so fast. The Kazekage's orders were clear. If we encounter the yellow flash, we must retreat immediately. Fall back. Frustration flashed across their faces, but none dared to disobey. One by one, the Sunagakure ninja turned and disappeared into the wilderness, abandoning the pursuit without hesitation. Seeing their pursuers flee at the mere sight of Minato, the remaining Konoha shinobi finally allowed themselves to breathe. Their tense bodies slackened, and many collapsed onto the ground, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair. Minato stepped forward, his gaze locking onto Shibi, who was barely standing with the support of a young Uchiha. Shibi, are you all right? Shibi's blood-stained face twisted with guilt. His voice was weak, but the weight of his words was heavier than any wound. I'm sorry, Minato. This was all I could save. Minato's breath caught. His entire body tensed as the realization sank in. Over 1,000 Konoha shinobi had marched into battle. Only a dozen had survived. His fists clenched so tightly that his nails bit into his palms. A storm of sorrow and fury threatened to surge from within, but he forced it down. Now was not the time for grief. What exactly happened? Shibi swallowed, his fists trembling as he recalled the nightmare. We walked into a trap. Sunagakure planned this long ago. Even their puppet brigade was deployed in secret. The moment we stepped onto the battlefield, our escape routes were already cut off. And with the Jonin and other elites taken away by Danzo. Shibi's voice cracked, frustration bleeding into every word. Damn it! I should have seen it coming. Minato listened in silence. He had already pieced the situation together. There was no use in blaming anyone now. His expression remained composed as he spoke. Rest here. I'll keep going. Shibi opened his mouth to stop him but ultimately sighed, nodding weakly. Your chakra. Don't worry. I'll be fine. And with that, Minato vanished. Yet deep inside, he already knew, he was too late. As he traveled, all he found were bodies. Countless corpses of Konoha shinobi, their lives snuffed out on this blood-stained battlefield. Among them were even children, their small forms lying motionless amidst the wreckage of war. They should have had a future. Now, they would never smile again. Never grow up. Never return to the families waiting for them. Somewhere in the depths of his mind, an image surfaced. Raza. This was the second time. The second time Konoha had lost to Sunagakure. And yet, Minato did not rage. He did not let anger consume him. Instead, he stood amidst the carnage, his golden hair rustling in the wind, his blue eyes void of hesitation. As he gazed upon the devastation, a decision was made. For the future of the village. For Kushina. He must become Hokage. Chapter 90, Aftermath. Konoha's devastating defeat in the Land of Rivers was beyond anyone's expectations. That day, when the surviving shinobi, led by Shibi Aburame, returned to the village, even Konoha's higher-ups couldn't keep the news under wraps. Before long, the entire village was filled with wails of grief and sorrow. 1,000 shinobi didn't just mean 1,000 lives lost, it meant 1,000 families shattered. Each one of them had been the backbone of their household, the hope of their lineage. Since Konoha's founding, they had never suffered such a catastrophic loss. But the real problem was that even if Konoha wanted revenge, they no longer had the strength to take it. As news of Konoha's crushing defeat spread, spies from other shinobi villages wasted no time in relaying the information. Both Kusagakure and Iwagakure found it hard to believe at first, but once the reality sank in, they immediately recognized it as a golden opportunity. The Third Raikage of Kusagakure seized the moment and launched a full-scale invasion of Konoha. The Third Shinobi of Iwagakure wasn't about to let this chance slip by either. However, as he studied the intelligence report in his hands, his mind wasn't just on his own attack plans. Has Sunagakure really grown this strong? Although the report didn't specify Sunagakure's losses, the fact that they had managed to cripple Konoha's forces so thoroughly was enough to put the cunning Inoki on high alert. Raza understood this as well. So, after executing his plan flawlessly and annihilating Konoha's troops, he made a decisive move. He abandoned the Land of Rivers, ordered all Sunagakure shinobi to withdraw back to the Land of Wind, and shifted to a defensive stance. At the same time, he publicly announced that Sunagakure had also suffered heavy casualties. However, despite the official statement, the truth was clear to anyone from Sunagakure. Their loved ones had returned unharmed, their triumphant expressions betraying the reality behind the facade. And the ripple effects of Konoha's crushing defeat had only just begun to unfold. Takumi Village, village of artisans. Like the Land of Whirlpools, it was an island village, surrounded by the sea near the Land of Rivers. Takumi Village was somewhat recognized in the shinobi world for its expertise in crafting ninja tools. Author's note, it appeared in a filler episode related to Gaara. Also, this village does not have Gakure in its name. However, rather than bringing prosperity, this specialty had turned them into a target for exploitation. Due to their small size and lack of military power, they were forced into servitude, supplying the great nations with ninja tools at unfairly low prices. The entire country had essentially become nothing more than an armory for the 5 great nations. As a result, both the Land of Rivers and Takumi Village had long been searching for a way to break free from their oppressive status. But for years, the overwhelming power of the great nations had left them without hope. Until today. Within a courtyard built in the classical Japanese style, a man clad in full armor knelt on one knee before an elderly figure dressed entirely in white, his hair as white as snow. "Suko, what business do you have with me?" The armored man, Suko, bowed his head with deep respect. "Leader, I have come to request permission to leave Takumi Village." The white-haired elder's expression darkened instantly. "Suko, do you intend to betray the village?" Suko shook his head firmly. "No. Leader, it is precisely for the future of our village that I must leave." As he spoke, Suko took out a scroll from his sleeve and carefully presented it. The elder frowned as he accepted it, unrolling it with a look of confusion. "What is this?" "Leader, you must have heard about the battle between Sunagakure and Konoha in the Land of Rivers 2 days ago." The elder nodded with a sigh. "I never expected that Sunagakure, long regarded as the weakest of the 5 great shinobi villages, would repeatedly humiliate Konoha and deal them such devastating losses. But what does that have to do with us? You must remember, Neutrality is the only reason we have survived between the 5 great nations. Suko nodded, his voice steady. I understand. That was true when we had no means to escape their control. But now, I see an opportunity. The elder's gaze sharpened. What do you mean? Suko's eyes shifted toward the scroll in the elder's hands. Curious about Sunagakure's sudden rise, I personally traveled there yesterday under the guise of delivering ninja tools. That is when I made an important discovery. Sunagakure is desperately searching for a solution to its severe transportation problems. Whoever can provide a viable solution will be granted the status of an elite or even an elder within the village. The elder's eyes flickered with interest. If we can obtain such a position, Suko continued, we may finally gain access to something that has always been beyond our reach, a tailed beast. The elder's expression shifted, his sharp gaze lingering on Suko before he finally spoke. Proceed. Suko chuckled. As we all know, among the 9-tailed beasts in the shinobi world, only Sunagakure's one-tailed Shikaku is sealed within an elderly Jinchuriki. It won't be long before they seek to create a new host. And in the entire shinobi world, no one surpasses us in crafting ninja tools. If we seize the right opportunity, we might be able to take Shikaku's power for ourselves and revive Saimai-sama. With Lord Saimai's strength, Takumi Village will no longer be reduced to a mere weapons factory for the 5 great nations. Instead, we will rise and conquer the entire shinobi world. The elder's expression wavered. The temptation was undeniable, but doubt still lingered in his eyes. Is this truly possible? If we fail, Takumi Village will be wiped out completely. Suko's gaze remained steady. Our village specializes in crafting ninja tools. Even if I fail to become an elder, infiltrating Sunagakure should not be an issue. For the future of Takumi Village. The elder closed his eyes for a long moment before exhaling deeply. I understand. Then I will entrust the village's future to you. To aid your mission, take the 4 celestial symbols men with you. Yes. Takumi Village wasn't the only one with such ambitions. In a remote part of the land, an elderly man with a gentle demeanor studied a newly acquired scroll. Sunagakure's victory over Konoha had drawn attention from all corners of the shinobi world. The village was now under unprecedented scrutiny, and any movement within its borders quickly spread across the entire world. Behind the old man, in a grand hall covered in intricate ceiling scripts, a massive creature lay in deep slumber. Its form resembled a serpent, but it lacked scales. Malicious chakra radiated from its body, coiling ominously in the center of the chamber. It seems the time has come to pay Sunagakure a visit. With Shikaku's chakra, the Zero Tails can be revived. Meanwhile, in Kusagakure, within the land of water, the third Mizukage sat in silence, his eyes scanning the intelligence report in his hands. Lately, reports had surfaced of Sunagakure shinobi lurking near Kusagakure's borders. This was clearly not a gesture of goodwill, but the Mizukage had little interest in investigating further. Kusagakure's internal problems were far worse than Konoha's. The 3 great bloodline clans that had helped establish the village, Hozuki, Kagaya, and Yuki, were even more troublesome than Konoha's Uchiha clan. Their constant infighting had fractured the village, leaving the Mizukage unable to mobilize his bloodline shinobi effectively. This was precisely why he had invested so much effort in cultivating the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. But now, as he examined the unexpected intelligence report, a thought surfaced. Perhaps it was time to meet this young Kazekage. Since Sunagakure's shinobi had appeared in the land of water, it was clear that the Kazekage had an interest in Kusagakure. With this in mind, the third Mizukage made his decision. There was no harm in testing the waters. Who knew? This might lead to an unexpected opportunity. Chapter 91, A New Era. Land of Wind, Sunagakure. On this day, Sunagakure was livelier than ever before. The streets were decorated with festive banners and lanterns, while firecrackers and fireworks went off continuously. The villagers, their faces filled with joy, were all heading toward the village center. Only those who had just arrived in Sunagakure, unaware of the situation, curiously asked around. What's going on? Why is Sunagakure so lively today? Hearing the question, a Sunagakure villager looked at them warily. You must be from outside the village, right? Ah, yes. I'm a merchant from the land of Marsh, here to post a mission in Sunagakure. The land of Marsh? That's quite rare. Understanding the villager's caution, the merchant awkwardly explained. Yes, we used to post missions in Konoha. But lately, due to the ongoing war, Konoha has had no time to handle our requests. Therefore, we decided to come to Sunagakure and see what it's like. Upon hearing this, the villager's wariness disappeared instantly, replaced by enthusiasm. Oh, so that's the reason. Well, welcome. Our Sunagakure shinobi are very skilled. You can trust them with your missions. Ah, yes. We've also heard about how Sunagakure defeated Konoha. That's really impressive. In fact, many outsiders arrived in Sunagakure these past few days. While some were undoubtedly spies, there were also many merchants looking to post missions. The entire shinobi world was in chaos due to the war. For merchants, war was a prime opportunity to make money, but it was also extremely dangerous. Konoha, Kusagakure, and Iwagakure were all caught up in warfare, unable to spare shinobi for escort missions. Kirigakure remained isolated from the world, making entry impossible. At this time, Sunagakure has suddenly risen as an alternative. Not only has it proven its strength by defeating Konoha, but it was also one of the only two major villages not deeply entangled in war, making it a relatively stable choice. But Sunagakure is really hard to find. We nearly got lost in the desert on our way here. Hearing the merchant's complaint, a villager chuckled sheepishly. That's true. But don't worry, the Kazekage is already working on a solution. You must have seen the notices that anyone who can help solve Sunagakure's transportation issues will be generously rewarded. Ah, yes, I saw that. But unfortunately, I'm not good at that kind of thing. By the way, is today's celebration of the victory in the war? The villagers shook their head, smiling brightly. No, today is a special day because of 4 great events. 4 great events? Yes. First, we're celebrating the official inclusion of Reborn into Sunagakure. Second, today marks the opening of our Shinobi Academy. Third, our Shinobi Hospital is reopening. And lastly, our orphanage has been completed. The Kazekage himself will be attending the ceremony, so everyone wants to go see it. Seeing the merchant's confusion over why these 4 events were considered joyous occasions, the Sunagakure villager explained. Well, although both the academy and the hospital existed before, they've been expanded under the Kazekage's orders. They're completely different from what they used to be, you could even say they're brand new. Not only are they bigger, but they're also much more beautiful. More children can now attend school, and medical care has become far more accessible. As for the orphanage, it's a brand new facility built to care for children who lost their parents, giving them a better life. And finally, Reborn, a small nation, officially joined Sunagakure over a month ago at the Kazekage's invitation. Originally, we were supposed to hold a welcoming ceremony back then, but due to the war, it was postponed until now. Hearing this, even the merchant was impressed by all these innovations. Usually, Kages are ninjas whose main concerns are always warfare and security, but Kazekage seem to excel in management of the land as well. Heck, even daimyo would find it hard to manage a land this effectively. I see. The Kazekage is truly remarkable. Obviously. The villager's face filled with pride. The merchant from the land of Marsh smiled in agreement. Sunagakure is quite beautiful. Before coming here, I heard the environment was harsh, but it doesn't seem as bad as people say. At these words, the villager's expression turned mysterious. Leaning in, they whispered. Well, you're not wrong. Sunagakure's environment used to be pretty harsh, but recently, the climate suddenly changed. Everyone's calling it the green miracle brought by the Kazekage. The green miracle. Yeah. The villagers still looked puzzled as they continued. For some reason, the weather has gotten much better lately. The sandstorms have weakened significantly, and green plants have started growing all over the village. It's honestly incredible. Huh? That's amazing. Right? That's why everyone calls it a miracle. Just then, a loud bell rang throughout the village. The villagers suddenly became flustered. Oh no! The ceremony is about to start. I have to go now. Welcome to Sunagakure. Goodbye. As the villager hurried off, the merchant from the land of Marsh grinned. In a completely different tone, he muttered to himself. Heh. I never paid much attention to Sunagakure, but who would have thought so many interesting things were happening here? If I tell Madara-sama about this, he'll definitely be interested. Sunagakure's Central District. Kazekage Office, within the Kazekage building. Inside the office, the gathered shinobi listened to the cheers from outside, their faces filled with astonishment and joy. It had been 7 days since the Konoha annihilation plan was executed. Everything had finally settled. After spending 3 days at the Land of Wind's borders to confirm that Konoha would not launch an immediate counterattack, Raza returned to the village with most of his forces to rest. Raza thought for a moment. While he couldn't openly celebrate the victory, as it might provoke the other great nations, completely ignoring such a significant triumph felt too subdued. At that moment, the Minister of Education, Gashima, Minister of Logistics, Ruji, and Minister of Medical Affairs, Iris brought exciting news: the expansion of the Shinobi Academy and Hospital, as well as the construction of the orphanage, had been successfully completed after more than a month of work. Additionally, the welcoming ceremony for Roran was also due. With all these events lining up, it was truly a time of fourfold celebration. Thus, Raza proposed hosting a grand festival in Sunagakure to mark the occasion. Everyone readily agreed. True to the efficiency of shinobi, once Raza issued the order, everything was prepared within just 3 days. As the cheering outside continued, those inside the office, dressed in their finest ceremonial attire, were momentarily dazed by the rare festivity. The village hasn't been this lively in a long time. The last time was when the second Kazekage took office. Ebizo remarked, to which elderly Chio nodded, a trace of nostalgia and satisfaction in her expression. Well done, Raza. You fulfilled your promise to restore the glory of the second Kazekage's era. You are now a true Kazekage. Back then, she had only supported Raza because he threatened her with her grandson's safety. But in hindsight, it had clearly been the right decision. By this point, Pakura had long abandoned any thoughts of contesting for the Kazekage's position. With a sincere smile, she said, "Congratulations, Kazekage-sama." There was still a trace of reluctance in her tone, but everyone knew just how difficult it was to get someone as proud as Pakura to acknowledge Raza's rule. Michikawa also spoke up. If the third Kazekage were still alive, he would be pleased to see this. With those words, he had finally accepted the third Kazekage's death completely. From this day forward, the Sand lineage would fully support Raza's rule. Raza simply nodded in gratitude. Thank you. At that moment, Baki entered the room, his face flushed with excitement. Kazekage-sama, the festival has begun. Raza glanced at the 4 people in the room, his eyes filled with determination and ambition. Let's go, everyone, together, we shall usher in a new era for Sunagakure. Chapter 92, The Will of Sand. Land of Wind, Sunagakure. The festive sounds of firecrackers and drums echoed throughout Sunagakure's skies. Dressed in his Kazekage robes, Raza stepped onto the rooftop terrace of the Kazekage building's 3rd floor, his expression spirited and determined. Below, an enormous crowd of Sunagakure citizens erupted into cheers. It's the Kazekage-sama. Kazekage-sama looks so cool. Long live Kazekage-sama. Behind Raza, Chio, Ebizo, Pakura, and Michikawa stood together, watching the overwhelming display of support from the villagers. They were visibly shaken by the sheer magnitude of admiration for Raza. However, none of them spoke, because today, there was only one true protagonist, Raza, the Kazekage. Taking a few steps forward, Raza raised his hand and made a downward pressing motion. Instantly, the entire village fell silent, waiting for him to speak. His voice, infused with power, resonated across the square. From the moment I was born, I have pondered a question: why did the first Kazekage choose to build Sunagakure in such a barren land? A land where endless yellow sand covers the ground, unable to nurture even a single blade of grass. A land plagued by relentless sandstorms and the merciless heat of the sun. A land where the very essentials of life, water, food, fertile soil, are scarce, and all around us stretches nothing but an endless, deathly desert. The crowd listened, enraptured. Compared to us, Konoha has fertile lands and lush forests. Kusagakure possesses vast lakes and rivers. Shikaku thrives near the ocean. Even Iwagakure, though surrounded by mountains, does not lack the land and water needed for survival. But Sunagakure? We have nothing but endless dunes and the silence of the desert. The weight of his words settled over the villagers. But then, yet today, as I stand here, looking at all of you, our shinobi who have fought for the village, I finally understand. The first Kazekage saw something within us. A will forged by the desert's hardships. A strength born from this unforgiving environment. From this day forward, we will show the entire shinobi world the power that resides in our hearts and bodies. We will prove to them that even in the harshest desert, the most beautiful flowers can bloom. At this moment, Raza closed his eyes before opening again. This is the will of sand, the unbreakable resolve within every Sunagakure shinobi. He raised his hand high. And you, all of you gathered here today. You are the desert's flowers. These, I officially declare the start of Sunagakure's Desert Flower Festival. Oh! Long live Kazekage-sama! Long live the will of sand! The deafening cheers erupted once more, blending with the sound of drums, fireworks, and joyous celebrations. Sunagakure had truly become a sea of festivity. As Raza stepped back, he turned to see Chiyo, Ebizo, Pakura, and Michikawa looking at him with newfound admiration. Pakura smiled charmingly. Well said. Ebizo nodded in approval. The will of sand. The idea is interesting. Michikawa also nodded. These words should be engraved into the minds of every child in the village. Raza, feeling both proud and a little shy, let out a breath of relief. All those sleepless nights spent crafting this speech had been worth it. As a person from the modern era, if there was one thing he understood well, it was the importance of ideological construction. Konoha had the will of fire. Iwagakure had the will of stone. Kusagakure had the legacy of A, passed down through generations. Only Sunagakure and Shikaku had nothing to call their own. But from this day forward, that would change. Unlike Konoha's will of fire, which emphasized self-sacrifice from one generation to the next, Raza envisioned a different future for Sunagakure, one where every citizen could bloom into their own unique beauty, just like the resilient flowers of the desert. Though the speech had ended and the festival had begun, Raza's work was far from over. His next task as Kazekage was to personally visit the ninja academy, hospital, and orphanage, alongside Pakura and Michikawa. Meanwhile, Chiyo and Ebizo returned to rest. Their first stop, the Sunagakure Ninja Academy. Sunagakure Ninja Academy. Since the first Kazekage had modeled Sunagakure's academy after Konoha's, it was centrally located within the village, situated just southeast of the Kazekage building. However, due to Sunagakure's unique environment, its academy resembled a modern-era school rather than Konoha's traditional wooden buildings. Constructed from stone and brick, the academy's structures stood tall, resembling circular towers built to withstand sandstorms. Enclosing walls shielded the buildings, leaving only rows of windows for ventilation. In the past, due to Sunagakure's elite-focused education policy, the academy had been relatively small, consisting of just a 4-story building. But now, a new 6-story tower stood proudly beside the original. Additionally, the training grounds had been significantly expanded, now equipped with various target dummies and ninja training tools. This year's incoming class alone had 600 students, bringing the total number of enrolled students across all grades to over 1,000, ranging from 6-year-olds to 12-year-olds. Both students and teachers were visibly excited, yet nervous about their distinguished guests. By the time Raza arrived, he was no longer accompanied only by Pakura and Michikawa. His wife, Karura, his assistant, Saramu, and the Minister of Education, Gashima, had also joined them. Though these individuals held high positions in the village, they were not quite on the same level as Chiyo, Ebizo, Pakura, and Michikawa. With Gashima leading the way, Raza's school tour began. Much like government officials inspecting schools in his past life, he visited each classroom one by one. In every class, he would step inside and deliver a brief yet inspiring message, reinforcing the will of sand he had just introduced. Work hard, children. I hope you will uphold the will of sand and grow into the desert's most beautiful flowers, the future of Sunagakure. Yes, Kazekage-sama. The young students, their worldviews still forming, were thrilled by Raza's words. Their teachers, too, carefully noted his speech. These words would become guiding principles in their future lessons. As Raza continued his tour, he struck up a conversation with his assistant, Saramu. Saramu, I heard you enrolled Sarah into the academy? Saramu was momentarily surprised but then smiled and nodded. Yes, she's in Class 1A. In the past, as a mother, Saramu would have never wanted her daughter to become a ninja. It was far too dangerous. But after spending the past month serving as Raza's assistant, she had come to understand the reality of life in a ninja village. She now knew how low the status of non-shinobi was in Sunagakure. Even she herself had started learning ninjutsu under Karura's guidance. Soon, the group arrived at Class 1A. There, Raza immediately spotted Sarah, a young girl with deep crimson hair, seated in the front row. When she saw her mother, her face lit up with pure excitement. However, what truly caught Raza by surprise was the black-haired boy sitting beside Sarah. His expression was far too mature for his age, serious, disciplined, and composed. Looking closely, the boy bore a striking resemblance to Michikawa, at least 80% similar. And, another OC, know that the author is taking sources from another fanfic and also included its own OC characters. In that instant, Raza realized the truth, and his smile grew wider. Yet, just when he thought the surprises had ended, upon reaching the second floor and stepping into the third-year classroom, Raza laid eyes on 3 more children. And at that moment, he knew. Everything he had worked for in the past month had not been in vain. Chapter 93, The New Generation. Kunmi, the boy sitting beside Sarah, was only 6 years old, but his serious demeanor made him seem much older. His face bore red war paint, and his features closely resembled Michikawa's. It was immediately clear that Kunmi was his son. And, again, he is an OC. I would have removed him, but he played a big role in later arc. Although Kunmi didn't need to attend the Ninja Academy, given his high status as a member of the Sand Clan and Michikawa's son, he was still here. His presence was a sign of Michikawa's support for Raza's leadership. By sending his own child to study at the academy, he was publicly acknowledging his loyalty to Raza. Kunmi had been raised with a strict education. When Michikawa entered the classroom, Kunmi eagerly looked up at him with expectation, but Michikawa did not acknowledge his son, offering no response whatsoever. In contrast, Saramu's daughter, Sarah, eagerly stood when she saw her mother, but a stern look from Saramu quickly made her sit back down. Raza observed the classroom, noting that it wasn't just an ordinary class. Many of the children in this class were from high-ranking families within Sunagakure. Despite this, Raza didn't show any special treatment. He addressed the class with his usual words of encouragement and then led the group to the next classroom. As they stepped out, Michikawa spoke up, drawing everyone's attention. Kunmi has awakened magnet release. The room fell silent as everyone processed the news. Saramu didn't fully understand the weight of the statement, but the others did. Magnet release was an extremely rare bloodline limit, and Kunmi had awakened it at just 6 years old, which was remarkable since Raza himself hadn't unlocked it until he was 7. Raza congratulated Michikawa. Kunmi is only 6, right? Congratulations, Michikawa. The Sand Clan has produced another genius. And no such clan existed in anime or manga. But as he thought about it, Raza couldn't help but wonder why such a talented child hadn't appeared in the original story. Did Kunmi meet an untimely fate? Michikawa, however, was unfazed by the praise. Instead, he looked at Raza seriously and made a request. I want you to take Kunmi as your disciple. The room grew quiet at Michikawa's bold request. Saramu's eyes were filled with curiosity, and the others turned to Raza, waiting for his response. Raza, however, didn't hesitate. No problem. Let him focus on making friends this year. Next year, I'll formally take him as my student. Michikawa smiled for the first time, a rare sight. He even joked. You and Karura-san better hurry up as well. Hearing this, Karura blushed slightly, but her smile was one of pure happiness. The group continued on their way, with the future of Sunagakure's next generation firmly set in motion. This was already an unexpected surprise, but when Raza reached the upper-grade classrooms, an even greater revelation awaited him. Before Raza's reforms, Sunagakure's Ninja Academy followed a 4-year curriculum. The first year was dedicated to academic studies, the second year introduced chakra refinement alongside continued academics, the third year added basic ninjutsu and kunai training, and the fourth year focused on preparing students for real combat. After expanding to a 6-year system, the curriculum remained largely the same, with the second and third years extended to allow more time for mastery. Starting from the second year, students were able to use chakra, making them half-fledged ninja. Knowing that today was an opportunity to impress the Kazekage, both teachers and students were eager to showcase their skills. By the time Raza reached the second floor, he could already sense various chakra signatures as students engaged in sparring lessons. Understanding their excitement, Raza didn't interfere. Instead, he took the time to interact with them personally, offering words of encouragement. The admiration in the teachers' and students' eyes was clear. Slowly, he made his way to the third floor. Then, he suddenly stopped. Something unusual had caught his attention. Instead of following the planned route to the nearest classroom, he walked straight to the end of the hallway, skipping over several rooms. The others exchanged puzzled glances but followed him without question. No one in Sunagakure would dare challenge the Kazekage's decisions. Raza looked at the classroom number, class 3-6. It was clear from the number alone, just as class 1-1 was for elite students, class 3-6 was the bottom-ranked class. Yoshima, the Minister of Education, grew nervous, assuming that some misbehaving students had caught Raza's attention. Is something wrong, Lord Kazekage? Nothing. Raza said, peering into the classroom. He then pointed at 3 children sitting in the middle row. What are their names? The others followed his gaze. The 3 kids were refining their chakra, but there was nothing remarkable about them. Their chakra levels were pitifully low. Students like these would struggle to even graduate. No one could understand why Raza had taken an interest in them. Yoshima hesitated, visibly embarrassed. He oversaw the entire academy, but remembering the names of students from the lowest-ranking class was too much to ask. Before he could stammer out a response, Karura spoke up. Their names are Mori, Angie, and Ro. Why do you ask, Raza-kun? Saramu's expression shifted as well. Oh, those 3? Raza was intrigued. You both recognize them? Karura explained. They're Chisato's children. Raza immediately recalled that Chisato had been one of Karura's teammates when she was still a genin. Unfortunately, Karura's rapid advancement to Chunin led to their team's disbandment, but they had remained close. That, however, didn't explain why Raza could sense traces of senjutsu energy from these 3 children. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was undeniably there. This was the first time he had encountered such a phenomenon. Had the benefits of his senjutsu training already begun to influence Sunagakure's population? If so, Why these three specifically? If he could uncover the reason behind their connection to Senjutsu, it might hold the key to revolutionizing the entire village. As Raza pondered, Kurura and Saramu continued their story, providing a possible explanation. They recounted how, some time ago, these three children had led them to a well where small patches of grass had begun growing, something unheard of in Sunagakure. Kurura chuckled. Ever since I told them how rare that grass was, they'd made it their personal mission to protect it. They patrol the wells whenever they have free time, acting like little guards. A lot of people in the village have seen them doing it. Chapter 94, Diverted Fate. Raza seemed to understand now why these three children were so special. It is because their bodies actually contain Senjutsu energy. However, this only made him even more curious. Was it because these children were frequently exposed to Senjutsu energy, or was it a gift from this protective phenomenon? If it was the former, then that was a good thing. It meant that as Senjutsu energy in this world continued to grow stronger, Sunagakure, as the source, would have the advantage of proximity, awakening more ninja influenced by Senjutsu energy. But if it was the latter, then it would be a bit troublesome. With that thought, Raza turned his gaze toward Saramu. If it was the first case, then someone like Saramu, who was born with the ability to use Dragon Vein Chakra, should also have Senjutsu energy within him. After all, the current Senjutsu energy was all derived from the Dragon Vein Chakra. I heard that you've been learning ninjutsu, Saramu? Everyone was caught off guard by Raza's sudden change of topic, and Saramu felt a bit embarrassed, like a child caught sneaking around. Yes, at the very least, it makes moving around more convenient. Raza nodded and then dropped the subject, turning instead to Gashima. Kids like these would be wasting their time learning ninjutsu. Starting today, shift their studies to taijutsu. I obtained a secret taijutsu technique from Konoha. Once I've refined it, I'll pass it on to them. Gashima immediately responded with excitement. That's wonderful, Kazekage-sama. On behalf of these children, I thank you. Alright, let's continue. As expected, surprises like this didn't happen all the time. The rest of the students at the Ninja Academy were unremarkable, failing to catch Raza's attention. Next, they proceeded to their second stop, the Sunagakure Ninja Hospital. Here, Raza met his brother-in-law, Yashimaru, and the head of the medical department, Iris. Yashimaru was present at Iris' request. Due to the current shortage of talent in Sunagakure, the village's ninja hospital lacked high-level medical ninja who could take charge. As a result, Raza had temporarily assigned Yashimaru here. However, this arrangement wouldn't be necessary for much longer. Yashimaru, have you ever thought about taking on a disciple? Yashimaru's gentle face showed a moment of surprise before he nodded. I wouldn't mind, but am I qualified? Raza chuckled. Of course, you are. You're a jonin of the village, and it's about time you started training a few students. Contributing to the village's future is important. Then I will look for one. Seeing her husband and younger brother getting along so well, Kurura was naturally very happy. After taking a brief tour of the newly expanded ninja hospital, they moved on to their third stop, the orphanage. Unlike the Ninja Academy and the Ninja Hospital, which were located in the village center, the orphanage had been newly constructed in the southeastern part of the village. This area had plenty of open land, allowing for a large facility. The building maintained the typical enclosed architectural style of Sunagakure. When Raza arrived, the head of the logistics department, Ryuji, was already there waiting. Since the orphanage had just been built, it was still mostly empty, with only a few children. Ryuji proceeded to share his thoughts on the matter. Report, Kazekage-sama. Moving forward, I will have the villagers pay attention to orphans who have lost their parents due to war in the Land of Wind and other small countries. This should gradually increase the number of children here. If you encounter any difficulties, just let me know. As soon as Raza finished speaking, Ryuji immediately seized the opportunity. Kazekage-sama, there actually is one difficulty. Saying this, Ryuji glanced at Kurura, looking slightly embarrassed. I have a rather bold request. Would it be possible for Lady Karura to become the director of the orphanage? Everyone was taken aback by his words, and Karura instinctively covered her mouth in surprise. Of course, this wasn't entirely Ruji's own idea, it was something Raza had subtly hinted at. Oh? Tell me your reasoning. Ruji, understanding the situation well, quickly explained. Kazekage-sama, Lady Karura. An orphanage is not like other places. The children here have lost their parents, making them extremely sensitive. They need someone as gentle as Lady Karura to take care of them. Raza nodded, then turned to Karura. What do you think, Karura? Would I be able to? Karura hesitated. Noticing Raza's intention, Saramu immediately encouraged her. Of course, you can. Karura, you're so kind and you definitely take great care of these children. Seeing the encouraging look in her husband's eyes, Karura finally nodded. Then, I'll give it a try. Good. Ruji, coordinate with Karura on the transition. The official order will be issued tomorrow. Yes, sir. Just then, Raza suddenly stopped in his tracks, his gaze fixed on something. Recognizing this familiar reaction, everyone instinctively followed his line of sight. In the orphanage, a woman with flowing golden hair, dressed in a nun's habit, was tending to the few children present. Her radiant smile, warm and beautiful, exuded a natural kindness that made even the women in the group feel a sense of closeness. Noticing the attention, the woman looked over and gave them a gentle nod. Ruji immediately stepped forward and introduced her. Kazekage-sama, this is Miss Nono. She is from the Land of Wind and has extensive experience as an orphanage director. When I heard about her background, I invited her here to help care for the children. As if noticing the Kazekage, Nono stepped forward. Greetings, Kazekage-sama. The woman named Nono greeted Raza with remarkable composure, as if he were just another ordinary person. Although Raza was a bit surprised, he showed no sign of it and instead expressed his gratitude. Thank you, Miss Nono. Looking after these children will be no easy task, but I feel much more confident about the orphanage's future with someone as experienced as you. This is my duty. Nono replied with a gentle nod. Then, I won't keep you any longer. With that, they moved on to the final stop, a tour of the settlement where the people of Roran lived, accompanied by Saramu. Unfortunately, no further surprises awaited them. By the time they returned to the Kazekage building, Raza's official duties for the day had concluded. However, everyone could sense that something was off. Raza seemed deep in thought. Back in the office, Pakura, feeling oddly irritated, spoke up. So, Kazekage-sama, are you still thinking about that Nono woman? Her words caused an awkward atmosphere among the women present. Meanwhile, the only other man in the room, Michikawa, nodded and added. That Miss Nono was indeed very beautiful. After all, even he had to admit that the warmth and motherly aura she exuded was quite attractive to men. Hearing this, Karura, who hadn't initially suspected anything, suddenly widened her eyes in an adorable mix of shock and scrutiny toward her husband. Saramu, on the other hand, glanced at Raza with a slight hint of disdain. Men really are all the same. Caught completely off guard by the sudden accusations, Raza was momentarily baffled. However, he didn't let it bother him. Seeing that he was surrounded by his closest confidants, he finally shared what was actually on his mind. No. What I was thinking about was something else entirely. Miss Nono is actually from Sunagakure. Chapter 95, Summoning Beast. As soon as Raza spoke, everyone present was first stunned, then filled with anger. They did not doubt the truth of Raza's words. Bang! Pakura slammed the armrest of her chair and shouted. Konoha really doesn't learn its lesson. They just suffered such a huge loss, but no. They want to stir the trouble with our village again. Raza shook his head and remained calm. It may not necessarily be Konoha's will. This Miss Nono belongs to Konoha's root. Root? Danzo! Everyone was shocked, and then Michikawa seemed to recall something. I heard that you critically injured Konoha's elder, Kazekage-sama, and has been on the verge of death, unable to wake up until now. But looking at it now, that must be fake. It was just an excuse for him to escape accountability. That seems to be the case. Raza nodded, while Pakura, looking displeased, spoke up. If we had known, you should have just finished him off. A cockroach like him constantly targeting us will soon start to spread the filth. Raza sighed and explained. I've already explained this to you all before. Rather than killing Danzo, letting him live is the best choice. You've also received Konoha's intelligence, despite the huge losses they suffered because of him, despite the Uchiha clan nearly going into full rebellion, Konoha's elders and the third Hokage still chose to turn a blind eye to their so-called friend. A ticking time bomb like him is much more useful alive than dead. Michikawa nodded in agreement. Indeed, Kazekage-sama, your decision was correct. Looking at it now, Konoha's internal conflicts are even worse than we imagined. But still, it's truly impressive. Even under these circumstances, Konoha managed to withstand attacks from Iwagakure and Kumogakure. Their foundation is terrifying. Hearing this, Raza also felt a bit helpless. A week ago, Sunagakure had completely annihilated Konoha's forces in the Land of Rivers. Immediately after, Kumogakure and Iwagakure launched full-scale attacks on Konoha, intending to destroy them in one decisive strike. By all accounts, Konoha should have been doomed this time. But unexpectedly, Minato Namikaze, Sunagakure's longtime rival, suddenly seemed to have been given a cheat code. Using the Flying Thunder God technique, he provided support on two fronts, not only defeating the AB combo of Kumogakure and halting their advance but also fighting alone against 100 Iwagakure shinobi on the battlefield, forcing Iwagakure to retreat and cementing his name across the entire ninja world. Pakura, who had once fought Minato, was clearly aware of these developments and was feeling frustrated. How the hell did he do it? This kind of power-up is just unreasonable. A little over a month ago, he wasn't this ridiculous. She considered herself strong now, but even she knew she could never achieve such feats. Forget the AB combo from Kumogakure, even just the 1 against 100 battle against Iwagakure was something she couldn't pull off. According to the intel, those 100 Iwagakure shinobi weren't ordinary ninja, they were all experienced elites. When she fought Minato a month ago, he didn't feel this monstrous. Raza was also feeling a headache over this. All he could say was, no wonder he's the protagonist's father of this world. His growth simply defied reason. That said, he wasn't too displeased with the current situation. Because first and foremost, he never truly intended to destroy Konoha. Whether he could accomplish it or not was one thing, but even if he could, he wouldn't do it because, in the future, he still needed the two protagonists from Konoha to stand against Kagaya Otsutsuki. Secondly, immense external pressure would also serve to unite Sunagakure from within. At this moment, Michikawa added fuel to the fire. According to our intelligence, Minato Namikaze hasn't even used Sage Mode yet. This made Pakura's expression turn even darker. The atmosphere in the Kazekage's office grew heavy once again. Aside from Saramu, who didn't fully grasp the significance of a ninja's strength, Pakura, Michikawa, and Kurura all looked somewhat dejected. Fortunately, Raza broke the silence and turned towards the Queen of Rorin. There's no need to be so discouraged. Saramu, could you extract some chakra for me to see? Caught off guard by the sudden shift in topic, Saramu was momentarily stunned. The other three also cast curious glances her way. However, she obediently pressed her hands together and began extracting chakra. As expected. The moment she started, Raza immediately sensed the presence of Senjutsu energy within her chakra. And its concentration was even higher than that of those three kids. That meant Saramu's daughter, Sarah, might also have the same potential. Alright, that's enough. The entire extraction process lasted less than a minute. Hearing Raza's instruction to stop, Saramu halted at once, looking at him curiously. What's going on? Of course, The others in the room couldn't sense Senjutsu energy, so Pakura looked puzzled. Raza responded, half-truthfully. Do you remember the dragon vein chakra of Rorin that I told you about last time? It's not surprising that Saramu, as Rorin's former queen, has the ability to absorb dragon vein chakra. It makes sense for her, but those 3 children? Karura wasn't familiar with the concept of dragon vein chakra, but Pakura and Michikawa were different. They understood exactly what it was. That chakra represented natural energy, the key to Senjutsu. So, the moment Raza spoke, realization dawned on them, and Pakura impatiently asked. You're saying those 3 brats have dragon vein chakra in their bodies too? Yes. This is good news. I don't fully understand how they managed to achieve this, but it means we have hope of mastering this natural energy. Pakura and Michikawa's eyes lit up at the thought. But you'll need to wait. I have to observe those 3 kids further. Understood. Both of them knew this wasn't something that could be rushed. Just then, Pakura suddenly realized something. We couldn't sense this chakra at all, but you could. Does that mean you've already mastered this power? Raza didn't hide the truth. That's right. But just because I could doesn't mean you can. All it means is that this is a possibility. Hearing Raza confirm it so directly, Pakura could only sigh enviously. No wonder we couldn't sense your chakra at all. That at least answered a long-standing question for everyone present. Seeing this, Raza brought up another matter. To avoid provoking other nations, we won't publicly celebrate this victory. However, I've already arranged for the village's ninja who participated in this operation to receive rewards. The Umbu are handling it, and in a few days, Baki will distribute them to you. Aside from that, Raza took out a scroll and placed it on the table. This is a summoning contract I obtained from Danzo. It's for a creature called the Baku, a summoning beast capable of using wind release. Unfortunately, there's only one. Which of you 2 wants it? Chapter 96, 8 Gates Release Formation. Pakura's eyes immediately lit up with excitement. She had vivid memories of the summoning creatures from Konoha, and since this one belonged to a Konoha elder, it was undoubtedly powerful. Michikawa, on the other hand, remained calm. Give it to Pakura. I already have a summoning creature, Michikawa said. Raza knew about Michikawa's summoning creature. It was the same one that Tamari, Raza's eldest daughter, would later use in the future, the Kamatari. Although smaller in size, it could significantly enhance the power of wind-style techniques. More importantly, the Kamatari wasn't a single entity but an entire species. While it couldn't compare to the summoning creatures from the legendary summoning realms, it was still a valuable asset for Sunagakure. Pleased with the unity within the village, Raza nodded in satisfaction and tossed the summoning scroll to Pakura. Thank you! Pakura gave Michikawa a grateful look. It was rare to see such harmony between the 2 factions that had historically been at odds within the village. Seeing this, Raza took out 2 more scrolls. These are another forbidden technique I obtained from Danzo. It's called the 8 Gates Release Formation, developed by the second Hokage of Konoha. By unlocking the gates that restrict chakra flow within the body, one can temporarily gain immense power. It's said that opening all 8 gates can grant a person dozens of times their normal strength. Dozens of times? The number shocked both Pakura and Michikawa. Pakura's eyes burned with enthusiasm, and even the summoning scroll in her hand seemed less appealing now. Of course, this technique comes with a heavy burden. Opening all 8 gates is almost certainly a death sentence. However, opening just the first few gates should be manageable for your physical abilities, and it will also enhance your taijutsu. Given Pakura and Michikawa's current strength, it was nearly impossible for them to achieve a qualitative leap like Minato Namikaze. Therefore, Raza had no choice but to give them a boost. The 8 Gates Release Formation was one of the best options since it's safe, reliable, and something even he planned to train in. The 2 took the scrolls, their gazes filled with admiration for Raza. Since becoming the Kazekage, Raza had been incredibly generous, rarely keeping anything to himself. His magnanimity made Pakura and Michikawa reflect on their past actions with a sense of shame. At that moment, Michikawa suddenly pulled out a prepared scroll and handed it to Raza. Raza was surprised to receive a gift in return. "What's this?" Michikawa explained. Actually, the Third Kazekage once conducted an investigation into summoning creatures. Although he didn't find Ryuchi Cave, he did discover traces of a giant serpent named Aoda. This information might be useful to you. Raza's eyes immediately sparkled with excitement. This was an unexpected delight. While Raza wasn't as familiar with the Boruto storyline as he was with the Naruto series, he knew the name Aoda, a powerful red serpent from Ryuchi Cave. He had even dispatched 4 elite jonin from his covert operations unit to search for traces of Ryuchi Cave. Finding Ryuchi Cave also meant the possibility of locating Yugo. However, Raza hadn't expected that his covert operations unit, after searching for so long, would come up empty-handed, while Michikawa had provided a valuable lead. "Thank you. This is indeed very important to me." Pakura, standing nearby, felt a bit awkward, realizing she had nothing to offer Raza in return. Fortunately, Michikawa changed the subject. "What should we do with the spy, no?" Raza thought for a moment before deciding. "Let her go for now." This surprised everyone present, especially Pakura, whose expression turned peculiar. However, Raza's next words made her feel ashamed for her earlier assumptions. Raza tapped the table and explained calmly. "From the beginning, my actions against Konoha haven't been driven by personal hatred. It's simply a matter of differing stances. In fact, I admire some of Konoha's shinobi. Take Nono, for example. Although she's a spy for Root, from the intelligence I've gathered, she's genuinely a kind-hearted woman." The others looked at Raza with newfound respect. His wife, Karura, found him particularly captivating at that moment, exuding an indescribable charm. Unaware of their reactions, Raza turned to Karura and smiled. "Karura, I'll leave Nono to you. Try to win her over. If we can turn her into one of our own, that would be ideal." Karura nodded firmly. "Understood." Raza then turned to face all the present. "Thank you all for your hard work. That's all I have to say for now. I'll be heading to Lady Chiyo's place. Does anyone have anything else to report?" Everyone shook their heads, but Saramu asked curiously. "Kazekage-sama, do you need me to accompany you?" "No need. For now, assist Karura in organizing the orphanage matters." "Understood." After leaving the Kazekage's office, Raza made his way to the residence of Chiyo and Ebizo. Unlike the high-rise architecture typical of Sunagakure, the siblings lived in a small, secluded courtyard reminiscent of Konoha's style. The area was quiet, and few dared to approach. Once a barren, sandy plot, the courtyard had recently begun to sprout greenery, adding vibrant colors to the landscape. As Raza entered, he saw Ebizo teaching a red-haired girl. Upon noticing Raza, both stopped their activities. The girl, visibly nervous, bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Kazekage-sama." This girl was, of course, Hannah. After bringing Hannah, a survivor of the Uzumaki clan, back from Kusagakure, Raza had placed her under Ebizo's care. His goal was clear, to train her as Ebizo's successor in sealing techniques. Unfortunately, Raza learned that Hannah, unlike Kushina, hadn't inherited the Uzumaki clan's talent for sealing techniques. Thus, she had to start from scratch under Ebizo's guidance. Ebizo, understanding Raza's intentions, accepted the task without hesitation. Both he and his sister, Chiyo, had seen something extraordinary in Raza. Having lived through the era of the first Kazekage, they had witnessed Sunagakure's evolution over 4 decades. Yet, under Raza's leadership, the village had transformed in ways they couldn't quite describe. If they had to put it into words, it was like the sudden emergence of green life in the desert, a miracle. She's a descendant of the Uzumaki clan, after all. Hannah has remarkable talent in sealing techniques. However, Ebizo hesitated, which puzzled Raza. However, what? The answer came from Chiyo, who emerged from the house. Compared to sealing techniques, this girl has an even more astonishing talent for medical ninjutsu. If you leave her to me, I can train her to become a medical ninja on par with Tsunade of Konoha. Chapter 97, The Arrangement of the Uzumaki. Hannah was clearly a little afraid of Lady Chiyo. As soon as she saw Chiyo step out, she became even more nervous. Raza didn't expect Chiyo to come out and snatch a disciple. However, this didn't affect his plans. I didn't expect you, Lady Chiyo, to want to take Hannah as your disciple. I was originally planning to entrust Yashimaru with teaching her medical ninjutsu. Chiyo didn't bother to hide the disdain in her gaze as she spoke. Don't be ridiculous. While Yashimaru does have some talent in medical ninjutsu and is considered one of the best in our Sunagakure, compared to this little girl, he's far behind. Letting Yashimaru teach her would be a waste of her potential. I see. In that case, why not have Hannah study under both you and Elder Ebizo? Unexpectedly, Chiyo's expression immediately turned serious. Do you think medical ninjutsu is something to be taken lightly? A person's energy is limited. If she truly wants to become a medical ninja as exceptional as Princess Tsunade of Konoha, she must not be distracted. This was beyond Raza's expectations and didn't align with his original thoughts. However, Chiyo had a point. Medical ninjutsu was one of the most scientifically advanced and practical professions in the world of Naruto. Sealing techniques were important too, but they weren't as commonly used as medical ninjutsu. Raza knew he would need an outstanding medical ninja in the future. After thinking for a moment, he looked down at the slightly nervous Hannah and asked, Hannah, do you want to become Lady Chiyo's disciple and train as a medical ninja, or do you want to study under Elder Ebizo and become a sealing technique ninja? As soon as he finished speaking, he could clearly sense Hannah's reluctance toward becoming a sealing technique ninja. However, at the same time, she seemed somewhat intimidated by Chiyo, leaving her unsure of what to choose. Raza found it odd that, as a member of the Uzumaki clan, Hannah had no interest in mastering sealing techniques. After some thought, he gave her a reassuring smile. Don't be nervous. Lady Chiyo may seem strict, but she's actually a very kind old lady. Despite his words, Chiyo still wore her usual stern expression, making Hannah even more nervous. However, deep down, she truly had no interest in sealing techniques. Encouraged by Raza, she finally made her decision. I choose to become Lady Chiyo's disciple and train as a medical ninja. Since you've made your choice, I respect it. Seeing that Hannah had finally decided to walk the path of a medical ninja, Raza nodded in satisfaction. Looking at Chiyo, whose face was still as stern as ever, he thought for a moment before saying, However, teacher sounds too formal. Hannah, from now on, just call Lady Chiyo Granny Chiyo. At that moment, both Chiyo and Ebizo's expressions changed slightly. Hannah noticed this but didn't understand the reason. Still, she obediently called out, Granny Chiyo! Chiyo's body trembled slightly. Looking at the nervous little girl in front of her, she seemed to see the shadow of another child, the same red hair, the same innocence, the same loss of parents. Was this heaven's way of compensating her? For a brief moment, Chiyo's gaze wavered, but she quickly regained her composure. However, when she spoke again, her tone had softened considerably. Training in medical ninjutsu is extremely difficult. You must be prepared. I'll do my best. Good. Seeing this, Ebizo's eyes grew slightly misty. He knew that, although his sister still hadn't fully moved on, at least there was a glimmer of hope now. With gratitude, he looked at Raza. Thank you. Then, turning to Hannah, he said, I thought you were planning to train this child as a Jinchuriki, Kazekage? At those words, Raza immediately understood why Hannah was so resistant to sealing techniques. As expected, she tensed up the moment she heard it. Noticing this, Raza saw an opportunity to express his thoughts and spoke up. I have no intention of creating more Jinchuriki in the future. Chiyo and Ebizo were both visibly shocked. So to ease things up, Raza explained. There's no denying the immense power of the tailed beasts, but first, our village is not in dire need of their strength at the moment. Second, the process of creating a Jinchuriki is too dangerous and painful for the host. As the Kazekage, I will not put children through such suffering. Of course, the real reason was that Raza no longer valued Shikaku's power. If it were the Nine Tails, that would be a different story. But the three people before him had no way of knowing that. Chiyo and Ebizo, after their initial shock, now looked at Raza with admiration. Hannah, on the other hand, was full of awe. You truly are different from the previous Kazekage. With the village in your hands, we can finally be at ease. Ebizo sighed. Chiyo, however, asked with curiosity. What about Bunpuku? How is he doing now? I've arranged a place for him. He's eating and drinking well. Well, he should be able to live another 10 years, at least. If you two elders wish to see him, I can bring him back. No need. As long as he's with you, I'm at ease. To be honest, both of us owe Bunpuku a great deal. We don't even have the courage to see him. With that, Chiyo turned to Raza, knowing the real reason he had come. Come with me. Hannah, you too. All right. Inside a dimly lit laboratory, various instruments were scattered around. In bubbling test tubes, 5 Sharingan floated alongside a pale, severed arm. Hannah, stepping inside, was seeing such an eerie sight for the first time. Chiyo wasted no time and got straight to the point. I have to say, the things you brought me are truly unbelievable. Mangekyo Sharingan, the first Hokage's cells, these are treasures I never even dared to dream of. Each one is unique, and thanks to them, my research has progressed smoothly. Any findings? I conducted comparisons between a blinded Sharingan, a normal Sharingan, and a Mangekyo Sharingan. Based on the residual energy in them, I've confirmed that the ocular power you mentioned does exist. Unfortunately, the Hashirama cells you brought have lost their vitality. However, following your suggestion, I studied Hannah's Uzumaki lineage and discovered that the Uzumaki clan's power has an unusual effect on Sharingan. Hannah blinked in surprise. Her cells were studied? When did that happen? Then, she suddenly remembered that when she first arrived here, they had drawn a vial of her blood. Does that mean my idea is feasible? Raza asked, but Chiyo shook her head cautiously. It's still too early to tell. I need more time to continue my research. I understand. Thank you for your hard work. After speaking, Raza turned to Hannah and asked, have you sensed that strange chakra approaching the village or entering it lately? Hannah immediately understood what he was referring to and shook her head. No. At least, as far as I am aware, I haven't sent anything as such. Seeing that she was still a little nervous, Raza thought for a moment and reassured her. Don't worry. From now on, Sunagakure is your home. As the Kazekage, I swear I will never go against your wishes. If I ever break that promise, you can have Granny Chiyo punish me. Chiyo, playing along, said with a smirk. Rest assured, I won't go easy on him. Hearing this, Hannah finally relaxed completely and nodded obediently. Hi! Chapter 98, The Development of Sunagakure. With Saramu as his assistant, most of the major affairs were taken care of, allowing Raza to return to the Dragon Oasis and focus on his training without wasting energy on trivial matters. It could be said that Raza was quite fortunate. He had obtained the 8 Gates release formation from Danzo. Previously, he had been searching for a way to increase the storage limit of his Senjutsu energy, and now, the 8 Gates had practically delivered itself to him. Of course, he couldn't just follow the training method of the 8 Gates word for word. After studying the scroll he obtained from Danzo, Raza gained a general understanding of the technique's essence. According to the scroll, chakra flows through a person's body along the circulatory system and passes through 8 key nodes, listed from top to bottom as Gate of Opening, Gate of Rest, Gate of Life, Gate of Pain, Gate of Limit, Gate of View, Gate of Wonder, and Gate of Death. Each time a gate is opened, the ninja's chakra surges at least twofold, and the increase in chakra enhances the user's physical strength, granting them greater power and speed. At first glance, this seemed identical to the star-release chakra mode, a technique that burns the body's potential to unleash immense power. However, the two were fundamentally different. If a ninja's chakra had a fixed upper limit, then star-release chakra mode functioned by stimulating the body's cells to generate more chakra, increasing that limit. Meanwhile, the 8 gates merely improved the efficiency of utilizing existing chakra. Yes, efficiency. As described in the 8 gates scroll. If the chakra inside a ninja's body were compared to a river, then the 8 gates would be like dams built along its course, restricting the flow of water downstream. For example, if a ninja's maximum chakra capacity were 100 units, the natural flow through the gates would reduce that amount significantly at each checkpoint. This biological safeguard prevents organs from being overwhelmed by excessive chakra circulation. The foundation of the 8 gates technique lies in rigorous training to condition the body's pathways and organs to withstand greater stress. Conversely, when a ninja opens a gate, they unlock a portion of their restricted chakra, instantly doubling their available reserves. From this perspective, mastering the 8 gates wouldn't necessarily benefit Rasa much, as it only unshackled chakra that was already present rather than expanding its natural capacity. And currently, Rasa didn't even have chakra in his body. However, on the flip side, when Rasa absorbed Senjutsu energy, it still followed the same chakra pathway system. This meant that unlocking the 8 gates could increase the efficiency of his Senjutsu absorption. Additionally, the specialized training involved in the 8 gates, exercises designed to enhance the body's pathways and organs to withstand greater stress, would, in turn, boost his overall physical capabilities and, indirectly, his capacity to store chakra. Of course, these were just theoretical deductions Rasa had made based on the 8 gates technique. Now, it was time to put them to the test. Thus, Rasa began his 8 gates training in the Dragon Oasis. While the outside world was engulfed in the flames of war, Sunagakure was experiencing an unprecedented period of prosperity. The village's 2 victories against Konoha, especially the second battle, significantly boosted its standing in the shinobi world. Once considered the weakest of the 5 great shinobi villages, Sunagakure had now risen to stand on equal footing with Kusagakure and Iwagakure. This newfound status brought immediate benefits. First, more people began coming to Sunagakure to commission missions. Second, a growing number of civilians wished to settle in the village. After all, finding a safe place to live was no easy task with the world in chaos. Despite the harsh desert environment, Sunagakure offered something far more valuable: security. This influx of people and resources led to a rapid increase in wealth and population. To screen these new settlers, the village's shinobi were working around the clock, overwhelmed by the sheer number of applicants. At the same time, the surge in population and economic activity triggered a construction boom within the village. New residents needed places to live, food to eat, and daily necessities, leading to the creation of countless job opportunities. Furthermore, after the recent wars, Sunagakure's shinobi were flush with money. With increased welfare benefits, even ordinary villagers found their pockets full. And where there was money, there was spending. This combination of external and internal demand spurred rapid economic growth. Caravans from all over began traversing the desert, bringing goods and services to Sunagakure. Upon arrival, many merchants realized that the village's environment wasn't as harsh as the rumors claimed. In fact, it was thriving. Word spread quickly, and even more people became interested in Sunagakure, creating a self-sustaining cycle of prosperity. The local villagers had never seen the village so lively before. Of course, with an open village came risks, like the infiltration of foreign spies. But compared to the risks, the benefits of growth and wealth were far more appealing. After all, this was a golden age for Sunagakure. 1 month later. Over the next month, Sunagakure's shinobi lived in a state of exhaustion and excitement. Though they were busier than ever, seeing their village flourish under the leadership of the Kazekage filled them with pride. To compensate for the shortage of chunin, some of the older genin were granted battlefield promotions. Though these newly promoted chunin lacked combat strength, their years of experience made them well suited for maintaining order and managing internal affairs. However, a new issue soon emerged. At the current rate of growth, it wouldn't take more than a year before the village ran out of land and housing. Some of the higher-ups voiced concerns, arguing that restrictions should be placed on incoming settlers. After all, Sunagakure was a shinobi village. Too many outsiders could destabilize its core foundation. But when Sarima reported this to Raza, his response was simple. Ignore them. A village's core will always be its shinobi. As long as the shinobi remain stable, everything else is secondary. As for land and housing, I'll take care of it when the time comes. Given Raza's overwhelming influence, no one dared to oppose his decision openly. At most, they grumbled in private. Meanwhile, after over a month of grueling training, Raza had successfully mastered the fourth gate, Gate of Pain. The results exceeded his expectations. He could now feel himself surpassing the level of an ordinary Kage. He had stepped into the realm of the Super Kage. Chapter 99, Stepping into Super Kage. Beneath the colossal divine tree in the Dragon's Oasis, Raza sat in meditation, resembling the Buddha under the Bodhi tree. A visible green aura surrounded him, making his hair float upward, much like a Super Saiyan. However, unlike the intense surging energy seen when Lee Orgai opened the gates, Raza's aura remained calm and serene. The reason was simple. While he was indeed training in the 8 gates, he wasn't following the grueling, self-punishing method that Lee and Guy had used. Instead, he had found a shortcut. The harsh and torturous training for the 8 gates was necessary because a ninja's body had to be conditioned to withstand the severe backlash of opening them. But Raza was different. He had no concerns about chakra damaging his body when unlocking the gates. For one, he had no chakra in his body. Secondly, Senjutsu energy possessed immense vitality and could rapidly heal any damage. Thus, he approached the technique like certain martial arts in fictional novels. He trained the 8 gates in reverse. Rather than preparing his body through rigorous conditioning, he directly experimented with gradually opening the gates. If his body suffered injuries, the Senjutsu energy would automatically heal them. And in the process of healing, his body and chakra pathways would grow stronger. Of course, he wasn't reckless enough to open all the gates at once. He progressed cautiously, one step at a time. Even so, with this cheat-like training method, combined with his naturally powerful physique as a Kage, he reached the 4th gate, the Gate of Pain, within a single month. More importantly, this training method was akin to the Super Saiyan full power state in Dragon Ball. He could now maintain the 4th gate as his normal state. This alone pushed Raza from the Kage level directly into the Super Kage level. What defines a Kage? In Raza's view, a ninja was someone who used chakra as their power source, fighting with ninjutsu, taijutsu, and jinjutsu. And a Kage? On the surface, it referred to the leaders of the 5 great ninja villages. But in terms of strength, a Kage was someone who had mastered chakra, ninjutsu, taijutsu, and jinjutsu, reaching the peak of what an ordinary ninja could achieve, with no glaring weaknesses. For example, the current 5 Kage each fits within this category. They had no major flaws in chakra reserves, ninjutsu, taijutsu, or jinjutsu. Take Raza himself for example. His large-scale magnet release techniques proved that his chakra reserves were formidable. In ninjutsu, aside from basic elemental techniques, his bloodline limit, magnet release, was top tier. In taijutsu, while he had once been weaker compared to techniques like Flying Thunder God or against someone like Jiraiya, he had still been at a solid level. As for jinjutsu, his immense chakra reserves granted him resistance against most illusions. So, what defines a Super Kage? It meant surpassing the Kage level in one or more abilities, going beyond human limits. For instance, Minato Namikaze, whose Flying Thunder God and Rasengan. Now that he had reached the Super Kage level in both ninjutsu and taijutsu, once he mastered senjutsu and the tailed beast mode, if possible, his ninjutsu and chakra would reach the peak of the Super Kage tier, even touching upon the level of the 6 paths. Well, tailed beast mode would be highly unlikely in the foreseeable future. And now, Raza had finally stepped into the realm of the Super Kage. In terms of chakra, by maintaining the fourth gate in his normal state, the senjutsu energy stored in his body had reached 4 times its original amount. This multiplier was terrifying because the high efficiency of senjutsu energy meant that his techniques consumed significantly less energy compared to using regular chakra. In ninjutsu, with senjutsu limit, magnet release, sand manipulation, combined with the senjutsu limit, would release he had acquired by absorbing Hashirama's cells, his ninjutsu had also reached the Superkage level. Moreover, would release compensated for the weaknesses of his techniques in rainy environments like the Land of Rain. In terms of taijutsu, Raza had stepped into an immensely powerful realm due to his training in the 8 gates. Each gate in the technique enhanced his physical abilities. First gate, the gate of opening, located in the brain, unlocking it removed the brain's natural limitations, giving Raza faster reflexes and heightened information processing during battle. Second gate, the gate of rest, also located in the brain, this gate eliminated bodily fatigue, granting him greater stamina and increased recovery speed, allowing him to fight for extended periods. Third gate, the gate of life, located in the chest, this gate was considered the center of the 8 gates and the last safe zone. Unlocking it drastically increased strength, speed, and reaction time, representing the limit of human potential. Fourth gate, the gate of pain, as its name suggested, it was positioned below the gate of life. Activating it started to cause physical damage, but thanks to the restorative properties of senjutsu energy, this drawback was insignificant for Raza. After unlocking the gate of pain, all his abilities saw an immense boost. How much of a boost? In terms of speed alone, he had already reached twice the speed of sound. Though he still couldn't compare to space-time ninjutsu like the Flying Thunder God technique, Raza believed he could now go toe-to-toe with the lightning-release chakra mode of Kusagakure. As for Genjutsu, it remained his biggest weakness. However, against senjutsu energy, which could even resist the abilities of the Mangekyo Sharingan, this weakness hardly seemed relevant anymore. At this point, in the ninja world, aside from Madara Uchiha, Minato in Sage Mode, and the hidden Otsutsuki clan members, there were few who could take him down with ease. Of course, that was Raza's humble opinion. In this unpredictable ninja world, he preferred to remain cautious. At the very least, until he obtained power comparable to the Six-Path Sage, he had no reason to act too arrogantly. But once he did, once even the strongest could do nothing against him, then he would dare to set his sights on the tailed beasts. This was one of the reasons he no longer planned to create more Jinchuriki. For now, though, after unlocking the fourth gate within a month, Raza decided it was time for a break. Not because of physical exhaustion, but mental fatigue. On the other hand, the Covert Operating Unit had also brought him some intel regarding Ryuchi Cave. Chapter 100, The Land of the Sea. The Land of the Sea. In the Kazekage's office, Raza, dressed in casual attire, was momentarily stunned by the report from his 4 subordinates. He had nearly given up on tracking down Ryuchi Cave, yet now, an unexpected surprise had arrived. Tell me, what's the story? As the 4 explained, Raza quickly grasped the situation. With the increasing number of outsiders arriving in Sunagakure, various pieces of information had begun circulating. Rather than searching for Ryuchi Cave aimlessly, the 4 had decided to gather intelligence from the merchants visiting the village. Surprisingly, their efforts had yielded a promising lead. A merchant from the Land of the Sea spoke of a legendary island known as Forgotten Island, said to be inhabited by massive creatures. People had reportedly seen snakes as large as mountains, along with enormous eagles, centipedes, and other creatures. Forgotten Island, huh? Do these merchants know its exact location? The 4 men nodded, and their leader responded. They have a general idea. A general idea? Yes, Kazekage-sama. According to these merchants, the island is surrounded by perpetual storms. Finding it isn't difficult, but entering is another matter. Only highly skilled navigators can make the journey safely. Moreover, the merchants who have landed there claim that aside from its enormous wildlife, the island holds no valuable resources. Because of this, most merchants avoid it. However, the creatures there are said to possess mystical abilities. We're not sure if this is the place you were looking for, Ryuchi Cave. Raza pondered for a moment. Clearly, this wasn't Ryuchi Cave since the legendary sanctuary of the White Snake Sage should only house snakes, not other creatures. But he couldn't blame his subordinates. Even Raza himself knew little about Ryuchi Cave, only instructing them to search for a place inhabited by giant snakes. Still, he decided it was worth investigating. First, from the description, it was clear that the island harbored many summoning creatures. This immediately reminded Raza of the summoning path of pain, which had summoned numerous creatures in the original storyline. Perhaps some of those beasts had originated from this very island. At this point, Raza was open to any opportunity to strengthen Sunagakure. Second, aside from the summoning beasts, his scouting team in the Land of Demons had sent back reports about Morio, the legendary demon sealed there. Since he wasn't yet prepared to target the tailed beasts, absorbing Morio could be the next best option for enhancing his power. With that in mind, Raza issued an order. Negotiate with the merchants. See if they're willing to take us to Forgotten Island. Money is not an issue, but do not reveal our identities. Understood. The four immediately set off to carry out his command. Though Raza had spent most of the past month training in the Dragon's Oasis, occasionally, he returned to Sunagakure for a few days to handle village affairs. Raza sighed inwardly. Holding a high position meant never truly having time to relax. At this moment, he felt like he finally understood why Naruto seemed so exhausted in Boruto. At least at night, when he was home, he could still unwind. Especially with Kurura, who had gone from being shy to taking the initiative. This change brought Raza both physical and emotional satisfaction. He knew exactly why. Yeah, she wanted a child. Naturally, he was more than happy to cooperate, sharing a few passionate nights with her. After leaving the Kazekage's office, Raza first visited Chiyo. As expected of Sunagakure's greatest medical expert, her skills were undeniable. After studying the 5 Sharingan eyes he had obtained, she had already begun attempts to clone them. This was something Raza had specifically requested. He remembered that in the original story, there had been a man obsessed with Akatsuki who had managed to mass-produce Mangekyo Sharingan through cloning. Raza wasn't aiming for something that extreme. He wasn't asking for bulk Mangekyo Sharingan, just mass-produced 3 Tomo Sharingan would be enough. Combined with Uzumaki bloodline enhancements, this could make Sharingan transplants more viable, potentially allowing Sunagakure to artificially create its own Uchiha-like warriors. Meanwhile, Hanabira had shown remarkable medical talent. In just a month, she was already assisting Chiyo with her work. Seeing how happy Hanabira looked, it was clear she had grown comfortable working with Chiyo. When she called her Granny Chiyo, there was even a hint of playfulness in her tone. It seemed she had realized that beneath Chiyo's sharp tongue was a soft heart. After leading Chiyo, Raza made his way to the orphanage. The moment he stepped in, he saw Kurura, Nono, and 5 female Sunagakure Chunin, along with several ordinary caretakers, all running around busily. These 5 female Chunins had been specially promoted to help manage the orphanage. Strictly speaking, such a role didn't necessarily require ninja, but this was a political move. It gave Kurura a trusted team of subordinates. Despite only 1 month passing, the orphanage had transformed from an empty building into a lively home. The number of children had skyrocketed from a dozen to over 100. This was proof of how chaotic the outside world had become compared to the relative stability within Sunagakure. Seeing the Kazekage arrive, everyone was a bit nervous. Everyone except Kurura, who was visibly delighted. "How come you are here?" "I came to see the kids, and you." Kurura's heart swelled with happiness, her bright smile impossible to hide. But she still pretended to be nonchalant. "Then take a look at the kids. I have work to do." "All right." Raza, emulating Hiruzen Sarutobi, adopted a gentle demeanor and spent some time playing with the orphans. The children were shocked and overjoyed, their eyes full of admiration and awe as they gazed at him. However, before long, Baki suddenly arrived at the orphanage, bringing urgent news. Raza's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'll be going now." I'll be home tonight. Hearing that, Kurura blushed slightly, as if something had come to mind. Back at the Kazekage's office, his assistant Saramu was already waiting for him. But she wasn't alone. Standing before Raza was a large, muscular man wearing a Shikaku forehead protector. He had long, waist-length orange hair, a massively obese frame, sharp shark-like teeth, and green face paint. Strapped to his back was a massive sword wrapped in bandages. As soon as Raza arrived, the man bowed respectfully. I am Fuguki Suikazan, leader of Shikaku's 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. It is an honor to meet you, Kazekage-sama. That's the end of this tale for now. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in part 5. Peace.